And Khadijah, it is on you.
All right. Well, good morning, and thank y'all so much for joining us this morning. I'm Khadijah Abdullah, and I am a proud board member for the Penny Foundation. My day job, I lead the economic development and social impact work at a company here that's located in Birmingham. It's a national company called Shipped, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to continue to support and lean into the work that the Penny Foundation does. As a board member and on behalf of the Penny Foundation Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you all to our Equity Summit. Founded in 2017, the Penny Foundation is a community chest located in Birmingham, Alabama. And our goal is to eliminate economic inequality in our Black community. This month, August, is National Black Business Month and Black Philanthropy Month. And we believe that it is a really great time to talk about what it looks like for us, specifically when we think about Birmingham and our ecosystem, what it looks like to actually create equitable ecosystems across the Black community. And so the Equity Summit is a convening, and it's focused on building awareness and share commitment among the Birmingham business community in order to invest in Black-owned businesses, in order to strengthen and expand, of course, our city's business ecosystem with a specific focus on people of color. And so I just want to thank our guests today for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and of course, thank Lord, and of course the Birmingham Business Alliance and Prosper for sponsoring the event today. And so looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, JW, it is my birthday. And so this is a fun way to kick off my day. And want to apologize, I'm going to stick around for a little bit and then I'm straddling two meetings right now. Then I'll hop back in, but welcome and thank y'all for joining us this morning. So I'll kick it back over to you, Lord.
All right. Thank you, Khadijah. So the Penny Foundation, for those you don't know, I'm gonna share a little bit about the Penny Foundation and then we will move into our program. So like Khadijah said, founded in 2017, community chest located in Birmingham. We've had a very busy month. When I look at August being Black Philanthropy Month and Black Business Month, and we sit at the intersection of that month, we are finishing up our second grant cycle for small businesses. And so the first grant cycle, we had about 56 businesses to apply. And for this particular cycle, we have also had about 50 businesses to apply. And so we're right now getting ready to award those grants at the end of the month as the judges are reviewing those applications as well. We've also had a conversation with other Black community foundations in the United States. There are only three. And so there's Poise Foundation in Pittsburgh, there is the Prosperity Foundation in New Haven, Connecticut, and there's the Penny Foundation. And so we had a convening, we had a discussion on the 12th of August. On last week, we had a great conversation around Bitcoin and how Bitcoin is playing. People who have Bitcoin also want to be charitable and philanthropic as well. And so how do we support those needs? And so now we're coming to the third week, or is it the fourth week? I lost track of my weeks. Fourth week, yeah, we're coming to the fourth week now, having the this equity summit. And so I thank you for joining us. We were talking a little bit earlier. The beautiful thing about technology is that we're able to reach people where we're at. The bad thing is that people are multitasking, and so we have people who are coming in and out throughout the day for this summit. And so again, I want to share the sentiments and thank Prosper Birmingham and the Birmingham Business Alliance for sponsoring this event. Without sponsors and partners, as we all know, that this work is not possible. So speakers, right? So it's good to be in a network, and I just talked about the importance of partnership. I've been having conversations with a group called Living Cities about ecosystems and equitable ecosystems, and for a little bit over a year. And when you have conversations, the good thing about Living Cities is they always have resources that they can point you to. And so I began to talk with them about how to build a system, or what does it look like to build a system? How do you support that system? And they introduced me to what I'm going to do. I don't know if you've ever been called this before, but ecosystem architects, right? So if you've never used that before, you can use that. So we have three ecosystem architects who are going to share with us on today. Let me share my screen. Sponsors. I have way too much stuff on my screen, but nevertheless, start the show. So our ecosystem architects for today who are going to lead our discussion, Ashley Gardier, who is an executive vice president at Policy Link. Judith Williams, the founding owner of MetroSource, and Nia Richardson, who, let me go back, who's an assistant to the director of small business entrepreneurship at Kansas City, in Kansas City, Missouri. So here's what we're going to, here's how the day is going to flow. And their bios, like, I'm excited to get into the content. So I don't mean to run by each one of these presenters today, because they are, again, I call them architects because the work that they have done has been transformational in the cities in which they sit. And so I'm just excited to hear them and trying to get to them as quickly as possible. So if I move too fast, just forgive me. I'm just excited to hear what they have to share with us on the day. And this is what we're going, this is kind of the flow of the day, right? So we're finishing up welcome and introductions. From 9:20 to 10:20, Ashley and Judith are going to take us through their work there in New Orleans. From 10:30 to 11:30, Nia is going to take us through her work there in Kansas City. And then we'll close out and we'll talk about what's going to be happening next out of this step. Understand this, right? I don't believe in just convening and talking to just for the sake of talking. So there's definitely going to be action steps that I believe that if we join together and take from this, that we will be able to better support and move businesses in Birmingham forward. Here's the other piece as I frame this conversation before I kick it over to Ashley and Judith. Two things. There is a tool that I found called the and Judith helped me out, is the National Atlas. Yeah. And I looked, and so the National Atlas uses the top 150 largest metros in the United States, and it used the census data from 2010, and it compared those two things. And what we found is this: in Birmingham, in 2007, Birmingham, Black business revenue in Birmingham was around $47,000. No, 47. Yeah, it's about $47,000 on average. In 2012, that number decreased to about 42. And so what it showed is that there has been a negative trend towards business revenue for Black businesses. Right. When you look at Jefferson County has about $100 billion in revenue altogether. Birmingham being the largest city, and the Black business revenue that makes up that participates in that $100 billion industry is less than 1%. So when we talk about having this equity summit and supporting Black business, this is a critical need, and there's no better time to talk about it than right now. The last thing I'll say is this, and it's just the story. For the last 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, one of the Penny Foundation's partner organization and I have been working with a business owner. She has not received any funds through PPP for whatever reasons. One, she didn't think she qualified for it. Two, her books probably need to be in a little bit better order. And three, she was just worried about trying to keep her business going. She runs a limousine business. She paid her lease on her car all the way through COVID. It wasn't until a couple of months ago that she missed the payment. And because she missed the payment, she got behind. They started the repossession process on her car. Now she purchased this, she leased to own this car and been making payments for about 2 years. Being able to keep her household and keep her job. But it has taken between me and I'm gonna say it, me and Elijah, we have had no less than 20 text messages, 10 or 15 emails, trying to figure out how we're going to help save this lady's business. She came to the Penny Foundation, and we were able to help her a little bit, but she needed more help. And the reason I was able to help her is because now through Urban Impact, she's in their program, in their incubator, going through building her business plan. And so I'm able to support a partner who's doing that work to help support this business. The truth is, I don't know if we're going to be able to save her business. She still might lose the business. But if we had a stronger ecosystem, it would not have taken us 3 weeks to get to this point. It could have been quicker. And so that's what we got to focus on, that we can't lose businesses in a time when they need in distress, and be intentional about how we build and grow Black businesses. And so with that, I'm going to kick that over to our first presenters, Ashley and Judith.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'm grateful for not having read the bios, but I do want to share a little bit about who we are, Judith and I, for context for the rest of the conversation. So I'm Ashley Gardia. I currently serve as Executive Vice President of Policy Link, which is a national policy organization. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But the story that we want to share with you about the work, this ecosystem architect role that we now have just learned that we play, was really about the time, it spans both time that we served in city government. So we were a part of Mayor Mitch Landrieu's administration, really leading a citywide economic opportunity strategy. And then that work really transitioned into the remaking, the transformation of our local economic development organization known as the New Orleans Business Alliance. And so just want you to know that those were the roles, first as government leaders, and then as architects of a new economic development model in New Orleans. And then the only other thing I'll say before we get started is just how excited we are to learn about the work that you all are taking on in Birmingham, a sister city of ours. You know, it is not for the faint of heart. And so we appreciate the leadership and the courage required to do the work and to do it in partnership. So this presentation, first I'm going to share just a little bit about Policy Link, give the context for how we were entering this work in New Orleans, and then hand it over to Judith to really talk about the entrepreneur ecosystem that we were building in partnership with so many others in the city. And then the other last thing is just shout out to Sheldon Ballum, who is our every person. He is a brilliant MBA and lawyer in training, and he shows up for us and helps us to look good all the time. And so he is silently in the background, but he's driving all of this. So thank you, Sheldon, for that. Next slide. So just a little bit about Policy Link. So we are a National Research and Action Institute. We are about 22 years old. One of our greatest contributions to the field has been this frame around racial equity. So it's crazy to think that just even a couple decades ago, that was not language that we were using. And so the idea that we have to extend even beyond civil rights to which is about what we, kind of intention and our the things we have right to, and now to really get to outcomes has really been critically important. And I think we're excited to see how, as a nation, we're now trying to set that as a goal. So first, we are a national policy organization, but what we've also learned in these first 20 years is that we have to have a far more coordinated and aligned kind of equity ecosystem, a movement. And so now you'll also see us really leaning in to offering enabling infrastructure to this broader equity ecosystem. For us, that is everything from really setting standards for racial equity in the public sector. So we released a For Love of Country report a couple of weeks ago about how to center racial equity in the federal government, but it's also about creating new standards in the private sector. One of the things that you'll probably hear us say over and over again is that even when we maximized what role the local government could play, like in New Orleans, the city of New Orleans, the private sector outspent us 50 times, 50 times. And so we're recognizing that we also need to center racial equity in the private sector. That enabling infrastructure is also about policy development and model policies and the advocacy that goes with it. And then we also, as a data and research institute, we really are trying to fashion ourselves as really providing the research department for the movement. So Lord, when you talked about the National Equity Atlas, that's just one example of how we want to really democratize data and allow folks, no matter where they are, what community they are in the country, to be able to access the data required to really compel action in their communities. Next slide. This is the only thing I'm gonna read to you because I think it actually matters for what it is that you're trying to build. First, we consider equity the just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. And that, quite frankly, that's what unlocks the promise of our nation and of our communities by really unleashing the promise in all of us. I shared this because it seems like you guys are now taking up a cross-sector approach to this work. And so I felt like it was important for you to just see this equity manifesto. So it says that equity begins by joining together, believing in the potency of inclusion and building from a common bond. It embraces complexity as cause for collaboration, accepting that our fates are inextricable. It recognizes local leaders as national leaders, nurturing the wisdom and creativity within every community as essential to solving the nation's problems. It demands honesty and forthrightness, calling out racism and oppression, both overt and systemic. It strives for the power to realize the goals, our goals, while summoning the grace to sustain them. And then it says it requires that we understand the past without being trapped in it, embrace the present without being constrained by it, and look to the future guided by the hopes and courage of those who have fought before us and beside us. Here are the big takeaways. Number one, the work begins where people, institutions, and systems are, not where we want them to be. It can be super frustrating, and yet that is our truth, that's the reality. And then the other piece is that programs and policies that are aimed at fixing people, like we've got to fix folks in order to get right, they actually can't produce the transformation that's required to deliver prosperity at scale. All right, so now for the New Orleans context. I always share this slide, not really for the words, I'm trying to make a point that after Katrina, $120 billion was invested in our region, $120 billion. And, you know, this is really meant to be a before and after snapshot that not only did things not get better in terms of disparities after the $120 billion, but in some cases they got worse, right? So for those of us that really believe if we just had more money, if we just had more resources, when the American Rescue money gets here and we deploy it, things are gonna be better. They will not. And it's because our systems have not been designed to serve everybody, what we call the all in the equity movement. They're not designed to do so. And so for us, I think what we've learned is that until we redesign our systems and our structures towards equity, we're going to continue to get the same or worse results. And I think the other takeaway for us is that redesign requires multiracial coalitions. It requires greater activation of people power. Like it's not enough to have smart folks in government or smart advocates or even, really well-intended business leaders. We actually have to now start aligning to get to the sustained impact that we want. And so a multi-sector and intergenerational approach. Next slide. All right, so when we started trying to figure out what a citywide economic opportunity strategy would look like, it began with this data point that 52% of working age Black men in New Orleans were not working. That was roughly 38,600 people, just Black men were not working in the city. And so a statistic like that helps to really make clear that this is not a fixing the people kind of thing. The design is broken. Because we were situated in city government at the time, it meant that we had the authority and, quite frankly, the demand of a mayor who wanted to see us move the needle in this regard and really create opportunities that would allow folks to thrive. So that's one piece, is that we were authorized by government, that we were not just authorized to do the work, but we were situated inside of the governmental structure with voice and power and authority to really activate multiple city agencies to behave differently. And it also meant that we were able to, that philanthropy saw the potential of our longer term impact. So just wanted to give you a sense first. So first we started with this compelling data that, quite frankly, we all should have been embarrassed by, that like we would be comfortable having for one part of our community, more than half of folks not being able to participate. And this is also important. It was at the launch of our economic development organizations. It was the launch of the new strategic plan, our new, kind of economic growth strategy, that we chose to share this data point. And it was the CEO of the Business Alliance who took to the stage. And I mean, we were imagine a hotel ballroom with all the banners, the energy is high. And that's when he shared, you said, do you know 52% of working age Black men in this city are not working? And you could hear a pin drop. And then folks just kind of held their breath until it was the mayor's turn to speak, because they were like, okay, well, then that's going to be over. And then the mayor just picked that right back up and was like, did you hear that? 52% of Black men in this city are not able to participate. And so we started from that data and used that as like, for business leaders in this community, if we want to measure the success of this economic development strategy, shiny as it is, thoughtful as it is, then we ought to be willing to have this data point be the driver of that work and that success. So wanted to say first, it started with data, and we absolutely exercise the full authority of the government seat, but the full authority of the government seat to bring everybody together around this work. This is the bringing everybody together around this work slide. So next slide, thank you. Number one, we wanted to use every resource that we had. And I would say most importantly, folks with lived experience. So you saw us convening and touching everybody who wanted to show up and who didn't. So we had like the formal expert table. So those were the researchers and the academicians, people who had been studying workforce and entrepreneurship issues for a long time, folks who had been in the work for, decades. We also pulled together focus groups. You heard that our data point was really situated about folks being able to participate in the workforce. But what we learned from the focus groups is that the solutions would not just be, kind of workforce development programs. We actually needed to grow businesses owned by people of color because they were going to be more likely to hire Black men. And so we had focus groups that was everything from job seekers and the training providers and the entrepreneur serving organizations and procurement officers, all of that, right? We had anchor institutions coming together. And I will say on this focus group piece, we started first with affinity groups. So like people talking to each other so that they could, first of all, just get comfortable hearing their own voices and get clear about what their perspective was. Before we then later, when we got to these collaborative design sessions, we're bringing people into rooms together in hybrid spaces to be able to design new, we call them prototypes for what those solutions would be. My favorite memories of this work were, having procurement officers, so the vice presidents of procurement of our anchor institutions sitting at the table with entrepreneurs, with our local CDFIs, like designing together what the solutions will be, which Judith will share. Same thing with workforce, a vice president of HR sitting across the table from, Black men who had been unemployed, having to design what the solution would be together to these challenges that we were facing. And then the last thing that I would say is that most of us get paid to be in these conversations, right? Our jobs, either the government's paying us or, our nonprofit is paying us, the economic development organization is paying us to show up. We thought it was really important to pay those with lived experience for their expertise. So first of all, we had job seekers on the workforce advisory committee and they were paid to be there. But then also, that 52% statistic is a census data point. We needed to get underneath it, which meant that we needed to survey Black men in the city to understand what were the challenges that they were facing and what assets they held. That meant that we hired and trained Black men who were unemployed as surveyors to take to the streets of the city and engage their colleagues. And you could imagine that was a very different kind of conversation than if we had just called Tulane grad students to do a survey, right? So just wanted to call that out. Likewise, on the small business side, which you'll hear Judith talk about, we built partnerships on purpose with Black-led institutions. So the Black-led CDFIs, we had them at the table as the solution makers, right? Part of the solution set. And we drove resources to Black-led institutions because either you believe in it or you don't, right? Next slide. So wanted to give you the big picture. Number one, more resources is never enough. We have structural design challenges, and it sounds like that's what it is that you guys are trying to take on in Birmingham in this work. Two, that it really does take multiracial, cross-sector, intergenerational partnerships if you intend to keep the work moving. And we'll be able to share lessons later about, did you move the needle forever or for a moment? And then the last piece is that the folks with lived experience, of all the experts that show up, they are really the folks who hold the solutions and interventions that we likely haven't tried before that are worth us stepping into that space. So here's where I'm going to hand off to the one, the only Judith Dangerfield, one of the most brilliant people that you will ever interact with, engage. And so she truly has been the architect of this entrepreneurship ecosystem. Now, let me get that right. Lots of people have been at our table. Judith has this special ability to hold all of the agendas and move us forward. So want to pivot to you, Judith, to really take on this banner of the ecosystem and why, not only what we built, but why we built it that way.
Thank you, Ashley. I always love an Ashley introduction. I do love being called wonderful first thing in the morning. And thank you all for having me here. So So what we ended up designing, what we built, the structures we created, there were two sets. One was workforce, and I'm not going to talk a lot about it. But the solutions we came up, the structural solutions we came with, one was Strive NOLA. Once we deployed Black men to the streets to find out what were the challenges, what we found was a lot of harm, a lot of hurt, a lot of damage that needed to be repaired, and that we really needed to build folks, not only their abilities and their capabilities, but their confidence and their belief in equity and their belief that the system could work with them. So New Orleans is one of the only cities that actually has a Strive program that is specifically ours. The Strive program, you have not seen anything until you've seen the mayor and the city council and our graduates cry together at a Strive graduation. But then to see these young men and young women really move forward. We also were able to consolidate our career centers into a consortium, so we could guarantee employers what they were getting. We can guarantee the work readiness. We could guarantee the skill readiness because we develop a set of standards across the system. And then we developed the opportunity stat system. Just like the police department had crime stat, and they had to look every week, every month, every quarter, where's the crime, where's the solutions, where are the problems? We looked at the system the same way. And that was everybody involved in the system, the workforce agencies, the small business centers, the community college, our universities, the unions, all of us sitting together around a table regularly to see where we are, where we're making progress, where we're falling back, and where we need to make the corrections. So I say all of that because I saw in the chat, someone had a question about returning citizens. It was the Strive NOLA and the consortium piece that really allowed us to move the needle there. And I'm sure Ashley will talk a bit more about that when we get to questions and answers. On the entrepreneurship ecosystem, we did an ecosystem survey. We talked to every small business development agency. We talked to the community colleges. We talked to the small business lenders. We talked to small businesses. And when we talked to our small businesses, we found that they had been everywhere. They had gotten service from every service provider in the ecosystem. And we found that they got the same service from each one. And what we saw in our ecosystem is that all of the products, all of the services were kind of focused at startup. If you want to start a business, we had a whole bunch of services. But if you wanted to grow that business, the ecosystem did not support business growth. And then when we really looked into the data about where our businesses of color were, we found that either the business folded in the first 3 years, or the business survived the first 3 years, and it would get to $1 million in annual revenue and never got any bigger than that. So we had in our system small businesses struggling, but businesses who survived but could not grow. They would be small businesses forever. So in building our ecosystem, what we found that we needed was to not only expand the money, but to expand the market, to do capacity building and technical support in a bigger way, and to create a high growth capital product. Next slide, please, Ashley. So I'm going to start with the procurement council. At the same time that we were building the ecosystem, we were also engaged in doing a disparity study, because we knew part of the solutions we needed was solutions within government and how government was spending. So in our disparity study, what we found that we were doing well. Businesses owned by people of color was doing well at 39% of all city contracts. So in terms of the market, the city government, local government was a good market for our entrepreneurs, but only 1% of the private contract opportunities. And then what we also found was that for every $1 that government was spending, the private sector was spending 50. So that we knew if we were really going to build the capacity of businesses to grow from small business to that middle market to big business and really have job opportunities, we needed to create a market for our entrepreneurs of color to be able to engage. Next slide. The other thing we saw in our ecosystem, we had lenders. We had Lift Fund, Nucor, True Fund. We had small business lenders in the market. Nonprofit lenders, mission-driven lenders. They were led by people of color. They were serving people of color, but they were all providing the same product and the same services. They were all using the same underwriting criteria, and they were all getting the same outcomes. So if you could get capital from any of the lenders, from these or any of the other small business lenders, you were capped at about $250,000. And you had to collateralize it with everything, including your socks and shoes. So we knew that just having the money, it was not structured in a way that would allow a business to grow. Next slide. So we struggled with the issue of venture capital and capital flows to businesses. What we found is that for most of our businesses owned by people of color, our businesses are funded entirely by debt. Our business was not funded with equity. We didn't have a friends and family network. Daddy didn't give us, $500,000 to start a business to see if we could make it work. So our businesses were funded entirely by debt. And one of the things we knew we had to do was to be able to connect our entrepreneurs of color to access capital in a new and different way, that we needed to be able to connect them to an investor ecosystem, an ecosystem that could support business growth without accumulating more and more debt on top of a business that was struggling to retire the debt they started the business with. Next slide. And then we looked at the training and technical assistance and capacity building. And we knew in our ecosystem, we had a whole bunch of classes where you could go to and you could learn how to start a business, and you can get some QuickBooks training, and you could build a strategic plan and a capability statement, and then you were out the door and go forth and be a business. But we knew that that was not the level of support that high growth entrepreneurs of color needed. If we want to take those businesses once they started and grow them from $1 million a year to $10 million a year or $20 million a year in revenue, to grow their capacity to provide jobs for the community, we had to ratchet up the kind of training and technical assistance that we were providing. So we got two of our premier universities, Xavier University, our premier historically Black college university in New Orleans, and Tulane University, which has one of the biggest business schools in the city, and got them together to create executive education for our high growth entrepreneurs of color, and to really prepare these businesses, not just a strategic plan, but a growth plan with some growth benchmarks and a pitch deck, so that they're not just borrowing money, but they can access investors and connect them to mentors in the space, so they would have someone working with them side by side as they move through their growth plan and move to grow their business. Next slide. So I think the biggest piece and the hardest piece of the work that we had to do was to create a high growth capital product. When we talked to our entrepreneurs, our high growth entrepreneurs, everybody talked about patient capital, but we had to, number one, we had to define it. And then number two, we had to make that capital, even though it's a loan product, look like an equity product. We had to find a way to build an unamortized loan. So if you're already paying debt on the money you borrowed to start the business, we don't want to stack more debt on top of that. So the loan could be interest only. It could be that you don't make the first payment for 6 months. It could be that we're financing a merger or acquisition of another business, and you don't pay this back until you've closed on your merger. We also knew that the CDFIs we had, they had a ceiling. So we had to find a way to get them to work together to syndicate their efforts. So if they could each do a $250,000 loan, well, now we're up to $750,000. And then can we take that $750,000 and leverage for another $1 million in private banking to get the businesses the money they really needed to grow their business from small business to the middle market. And then we knew we needed them to share the risk. And that was the biggest hurdle when we're talking about lenders. And even though they're nonprofit lenders and they don't have shareholders, they do have credit issues that they have to deal with. They do have to be able to show their boards that they're not losing money. And they are, in many cases, as risk averse as a for-profit lender. So we had to be able to show them that you guys can share the risk and we will help you reduce the risk. And part of our role there was to build a loan loss reserve to help reduce the risk that they were taking in making these loans. Next slide. We spent at least 2 years working with our CDFIs to figure out a new way to underwrite entrepreneurs of color, to figure out a new way to be able to invest in businesses and to get them to understand collectively the notion that race is not risk. So to teach them, we're not asking you to underwrite the individual. We're asking you to look at the opportunity. We're asking you to look at the deal. And we were asking our CDFIs to look with the eyes of an investor. So we don't want you to look at the deal as a lender. We want you to look at it as an investor. And to be able to do that, we brought investors to the table to sit with them and help to build their underwriting practices and their underwriting strategies. We had investors come to the table to look at the businesses first and to say what they saw in the deal and to help our CDFIs to be able to develop an underwriting strategy and underwriting practice that they could deploy collectively to be able to capitalize our entrepreneurs of color. Next slide. So we created the consortium. We had them build over that 2-year period a high growth capital loan policy and a high growth capital agreement. And it was, I want to say, probably the hardest piece of work that I have done in a lifetime. And I've been around a minute to get these lenders who are so risk averse to agree that they're going to sit at the table, they're going to work together, they're going to underwrite together, and they're going to share the risk. And to get them to sign an agreement saying they're going to do that. And they'd sit at the table and say, yeah, we got it, we're in. But they pushed that piece of paper around the table for a while. And until finally it took some cussing and fussing, but everybody signed that agreement and today exists through a memorandum of agreement on how they're going to work together. Next slide. Ooh. So where we are. So they finally signed it, and not only have they signed it, they're working with an attorney to create a legal structure, a special purpose vehicle that legalizes their agreements collectively with the individual businesses. We did create a $1.5 million loan loss reserve, and they have each committed to put at least $2.5 million in the fund. The first cohort of high growth entrepreneurs of color had completed their executive education program. Unfortunately, they completed it in the middle of COVID, so they're now in the process of renewing and revising their executive education programs. We have about $17 million of deal flow in the pipeline. Some of it is new business, some of it is property acquisition, some of it is acquisitions of new businesses or mergers that we're trying to assemble the capital for. And then we were just last month approved by JP Morgan Chase, the consortium, to be a participant in the National Entrepreneurs of Color Fund. So we are there. What we learned, it took 2 years to get those lenders to agree to work collaborative. It took some work. It was cat herding and arm wrestling and chasing pigs around the pen. It was hard. It was not easy. We did learn that there has to be a backbone. Even getting everybody to the table, there has to be a backbone. Something has to hold the work together. We learned that everybody has to have a stake. The outcomes have to be shared across the ecosystem. There has to be dedicated leadership. And what we learned specifically in the work with the Procurement Council is the narrative change, that race is not risk. Because even getting the procurement people at the table and the vice presidents at the table, getting the private sector to look at an entrepreneur of color or look at a business of color and not see color and see the potential of the business, that is still a challenge, that is still a hurdle. So that narrative change piece is an important part of building a strong ecosystem, not just for lenders and investors, but for the private sector markets as well. So I think that is it. And we are happy to take your questions. And I have to apologize, I'm not real good with the chat.
It's okay, I can, if it's helpful, I can just read them. I think the first one was going back to JW about the justice impacted individuals and families. I do want to double click on what Judith said about finding a program model designed to serve that specific population. And this comes back to actually a policy link value, right? Like if you design for the folks who are most vulnerable, most challenged, everybody wins. That is what we found in the Strive model. I will tell you, I don't want to lead you astray. This was one of the challenges. The work didn't get sustained the way that it was built. Like when we had new elected leadership, they had new priorities. It's all love, but we probably should have started even earlier planning for the long-term infrastructure beyond government. There was something else I wanted to say about justice impacted folks. That survey that we did, trying to understand the challenges that the 52% faced, 43% of Black men in New Orleans had criminal convictions.
Yeah.
I want to share that because number one, remember we say that systems are designed to behave the way that they are. Like we actually needed it. That was probably the second most important data point to the 52%, because we needed to see how our structures were behaving. And it created licenses, connects to the second question. It also put forward for our business community, like, do you see this? And so not only do we need you to be willing to hire and to ban the box and take on all those policies, eventually what it led to was our business community leading the criminal justice reform efforts at the state capitol because it wasn't serving. I mean, you don't even have the workforce that you need because the systems are behaving this way. So that's one piece I just wanted to name that. To Daryl's question about the frame for why to take on this work in the first place. Judith and Sheldon are my witnesses. We use different people's voices in different kinds of ways. I often was the truth teller, the compassionate and loving truth teller, but for business leaders, the message that seemed to resonate most was, you are as wealthy today as you are going to be. You and your family, like you've maxed out. First of all, you're not even wealthy for real. So what I know is that when you go to Aspen and when you go to New York and when you're traveling, you're not even wealthy. Your New Orleans money doesn't hold up. It doesn't stack up against these other markets. And you're as wealthy today as you're going to be, because we've decided that by leaving out 38,600 Black men who are capable and who want to participate in the workforce and in ownership opportunities, our economy can't grow. It can't grow. So then you can't grow. And so that frame seemed to capture people's attention, like for folks who genuinely were our elite business leaders. It needed to be, this notion of shared prosperity you couldn't be in a redistribution of wealth conversation. It had to be about like, no, you are in a wealth preservation conversation as you try to figure out how to transfer wealth to your next generation, and you can't, you won't grow. And then the other reality, which we learned at an aviation board meeting for one of the white business leaders in our community who was trying to, who didn't want to pay the DBE for the work that he had done at the airport. What he said was, wait a minute, don't get me wrong. This guy has been my partner for across many projects, and we work well together. He's always delivered on time and under budget. The challenge was that the contract size had gotten so big he didn't want to pay him anymore. He said, but he said, I wish that my children, I just wish any one of my children was as honorable and as hardworking as this man. As he tried to strip resources from the DBE, he basically said in the public forum, because of the uneven playing field, my next generation can't even take on the business that I've built, right? So as it relates to Judith's piece about the entrepreneurship piece, the other thing that we're recognizing is you can't rely, because folks have not had to compete, you can't rely on your next generation to thrive. And so you actually do need to invest in some of these high growth entrepreneurs of color to be able to continue, like, it's not just about their wealth, it's about your own too. So wanted to share that. But so much of this was about understanding that New Orleans and folks' individual prosperity, we just can't grow if we continue to just write off whole segments of our population. And then Judith, I think you answered the question about how the high growth capital product was structured. Yes, Kendra said you answered that question. Any other questions?
I had a question. This is Nia Richardson in Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you, Lord, for emphasizing Missouri. I had a question about the access to capital. As I kind of come into this industry, and forgive my camera for freezing up, CDFIs in Kansas City are not seen the same way they are in other cities, I've noticed. They're seen as a step down from a predatory lender because they're so expensive and they're not affordable. And they make my businesses jump through the same hoops. You talked about how to make it accessible. How are you making it affordable? Because I'm not sure if CDFIs in other cities are doing the same thing. Like they're like 10%, 20%, 12%. It's ridiculous. And so I find myself kind of bumping heads with them when it comes to my businesses, when they're telling me this isn't working for me. So where do I go? And the first thing I say, if you can't build a relationship with your banker, please don't go there. Go here first. And I feel bad for not sending them to a place where they should be going. That's supposed to be helping them, but it's not. In the conversations that you were having with the CDFIs, how did you, or was there ever discussion about how it becomes affordable for our businesses? It doesn't set them upside down when they are doing these different things or getting access to it.
Yeah, it was a very strategic conversation for us to get to that point. But what we had to commit to was to raise money for that. We had to commit not only to raise the loan loss reserve, but we also had to commit to raising the loan money to put on their books, and to do that through a program-related investment or a mission-driven investment, something where they could access the money for 1%. And then we negotiated a cap on how much they could charge. It's Fed rate plus the cost. So we actually had to sit down and bring in an accountant and go through a complicated process of showing them, you can deploy this money. It's not going to be at the 3.5% at the banks, but it might be 6. It's not going to be 12. That you can deploy this money in a way, number one, that we can reduce your risk. And number two, you will achieve your mission of serving this community. And you will do that in a way without being a predator to the community. So we had to bring an accountant, and we had to figure it out. And it's a Fed rate plus something. I don't remember what it was, but basically this is what the rate is. This is what it actually costs you to service this loan. You can't charge a penny more than that.
Can I get a copy of that? Oh my God.
I can ask them, because once they sign the thing,
okay,
they own the thing. There is an executive committee, and they make the decisions. But yes, I will see if they'll give me permission to share their loan policy.
Got you. Thank you so much.
And I did want to just say, Nia, that the reason that this whole collaborative design thing is not just Pollyannish, it was that we needed to create spaces all the stuff that people were saying in the street about each other, because they were saying the same thing about the CDFIs, like our entrepreneur community, right? There needed to be a space for it to get named at the table so that we could then commit to solving for it. And folks needed, and there's also a bit of accountability in it too, right? Like, so everybody's not always in the same design conversation. There was when we got to the point that Judith is talking about, the CDFIs needed to be in a closed door room by themselves so that they could speak their truth and all of the challenges that they were up against. But we at least needed the spaces for folks to start to get to the heart of it. Like, actually, one of our local advocates would show up all the time saying 12%, really, right? And so needing to have that space.
Well, I have this is Lord, and if nobody else has a question, I got them for days. So could you talk to us a little bit about, because you started in City Hall and you moved out of City Hall into the Business Alliance there, and now have moved the work out into the nonprofit space. Can you tell us a bit about that transition and how you're sustaining the work long term?
Okay. Let me figure out how to get myself organized for that. And then Judith, you fill it. So Mayor Landrieu, this is important. So Mayor Landrieu is white, and he was the first white mayor that we had for actually my lifetime. Like it had been 40 years. So he came into office as the first white mayor in a long time. He first term decided he wanted to take on as the thing he would be measured by the killing of Black men. And so quite frankly, how we got to do this economic opportunity work was through a murder reduction lens, and a recognition that law enforcement was an insufficient solution. And again, in conversations with community, that we needed real opportunities for folks. And that also was the reason that we centered Black men. That was the reason. Because the mayor said in public forums a lot, like, this is how I want to be measured. That also was why we were fully authorized, because it was like, nah, please help me figure out how to do this. So that was one piece. And we made everything Judith mentioned opportunity stat. We created a whole public accountability for the folks on this call who come from city government. This was like having to go sit at the city council table with the lights beaming down and like track on a regular cadence, were we making progress? Because we started really moving so we got from 52% to then like 48.4%. In like a few years' time, we saw that shift. The community is who then said, now wait a minute, I know we didn't do all of this for no reason. What is going to happen? This was 2 years ahead of any mayoral election, so no one had announced that they were running or anything like that. What's going to happen when we have a new mayor? Because Mayor Landrieu was term limited. So they created the demand for, where is this work going to live long term? And then I'm gonna just tell the whole truth, that when we went through the process, everything, the joke about, I think one running joke about me behind my back was like, here come Ashley with another convening, with another conversation, right? And so even the sustainability planning was a collaborative process. Now you got to be careful with those processes, because sometimes people are going to come up with a solution that you didn't want. The solution that folks named was, we should move this work into the economic development organization. That was the hardest work I know I have ever done. Number one, we had to eight of us stepped into the Economic Development Organization, and not as the CEO. So like having to lead up, not just with the existing CEO, but with the board, and to change and transform the people who were sitting on the board, and to get them to a place where they recognized they needed to add new board members, including Nia, your community advocate, who was like not 12%, right? Like the advocate voice. All of that was tremendously challenging, and it was worth doing. So at that time, the Economic Development Alliance, New Orleans Business Alliance, was really all white with a Black CEO. And then if I tell the truth about our work in city government, we were all Black with like two white staff members. So this merger, it was a merger, really brought the kind of team that would be required to do the work powerfully. We finally had like an economic development team that was a reflection of the demographics of the city. So we had Black folks and white folks and Latinx folks, right? Like all on a staff together. We had New Orleans natives and transplants. We had the mix of ages. And we had folks who came from that. Remember, the original team at the Alliance was like a business attraction team. That's what they were doing. It was a traditional approach. And so then we had business attraction meet this entrepreneurship work that Judith just laid out. So small business growth with a high growth was our intention for entrepreneurs of color. Meets workforce development, meets neighborhood development. Those four things came together, and we created this ridiculous culture where we were having karaoke in the office, and like we had to build new kinds of relationships. But we won more times in that new construct because Louis David, who's still there, who leads business attraction, felt totally comfortable calling Patrick Young, who was like one of our directors of workforce, who had, and Patrick would share this story, so he would not be offended that I did, but like he served 16 years in prison, and is like one of the most, if somebody asked for one of the best people in New Orleans for us to put up against anybody in any other city, Patrick would be on my list, right? So the fact that Louis changed how he did business attraction and saw Patrick as like a critical team member, and also Lynette White Colon, like on the small bit, like that we refashioned how we did our work. So anyhow, all of that was critically important. The challenge is, and I think we can, I'm telling you our secrets now, is that our mayor did change. And our new mayor has a different vision, right? And so she's trying to figure out like how to embrace, the Business Alliance did not exist before Mayor Landrieu, right? So it feels like the old mayor's thing. And she's still trying to figure out like, how do I embrace this as a tool that can help to accelerate my vision? Now she's used it a lot, right? Especially in COVID, like there was a gig fund and right? Like, so they're figuring it out, but I'm just saying that I don't want you to think that they're not bumps along the way. For how that works. And then, so that's still the place where the work is held. It is a public-private partnership with the 501c3 status. Judith and I have now, I work at Policy Link. Judith Damner works at Policy Link. But that work is still situated between the Business Alliance and the city government.
And one of the reasons for the CDFIs, for getting them to create a special purpose vehicle, is to protect this structure from the political economy. So once they become an entity, and that entity will live outside of government, it will live outside of the Business Alliance. So there can be some permanence to it. And the other thing I want to tell you, Patrick Young dated my daughter. He is a great guy. I do remember threatening to kill him, but he is a great guy, and he's a guy you would hold up to anybody.
That's too funny. All right. Are there any other questions? Like I know the people on the phone call, I know conversations that have been had on most of the people. Are there any other questions out there?
I'll ask one. What's next for you guys? I mean, for what you have built in New Orleans, correct?
Yes.
What's next with that? And you did talk a little bit about the transition and and the challenges of sustaining that, but what's next with the program?
Mhm.
So I'm still working with the High Growth Consortium, helping them to get through the building their special purpose vehicle, helping them to, now that you have a loan policy, we need you to implement it, not with the same intensity as before, but then also helping them to, there are lessons learned in here that you guys need to capture, and you need to be able to share with other folk who are trying to do this work with the high growth ecosystem. So I'm still working with them, not with the intensity before, but at least once a quarter, checking to see where they are, checking to see what they need, talking to the attorneys, and just making sure, nobody votes, nobody runs from the table screaming.
Mhm. And then I think on the workforce side, if I'm honest, we bit off more than we could chew with the limited amount of time that we had left. So Strive NOLA, that model was game changing for New Orleans. And so we immediately wanted to scale it. And so we then tried to scale Strive NOLA a standalone across the other 4 largest workforce organizations, like your Community Action Agency, our Urban League, et cetera. And in trying to scale it, we couldn't get to sustainability quick enough. And so it really started to fall apart. What's happening now is that Strive International is thinking about going back to the original Strive NOLA standalone model to make sure that, because it was, to JW's earlier question, like folks who had been stuck for all the reasons, right? Including incarceration, like we're not just getting jobs, we're becoming leaders in their space. So that's the update on the workforce side. And then I don't want to, we didn't share with you that we passed new policies. So we passed one of the first local hire policies in the American South during that time. We transformed our DBE, the rules around our DBE program. New Orleans still has one of the most ambitious DBE programs in the country at a 35% goal. That wasn't the issue, it was enforcement. And so, so we did all of that. So that stuff still remains. Where I was going is, it's not unrelated to the seat that I hold now at PolicyLink and the work that Judith is helping to support at PolicyLink. One of the greatest lessons from this experience for me was that incremental policy change will never be enough. As awesome as it felt, like even now to this day at the grocery store, somebody will walk up and say, "Miss Ashley, oh my goodness, look at my children," da-da-da-da-da, right? And that's awesome. And even though they were lifted out of poverty, somebody else filled their seat, right? And so it just never left me that we actually have to shift to structural change, like how we think about our economy, how we think about our democracy. We have to change the rules of the game, right? So even local hire, even procurement was inside of the hand that we were dealt. And we actually need to think about like, no, wait a minute, let's think about like monetary policy, fiscal policy, who's deciding how money flows? And is it possible to center the 100 million, like the third of the country? That's not just Black and brown folks, 40 million of the 100 million are white people, right? Like at what point do we center the 100 million? And that gives us a whole new set of tools to play with. That's different from the incremental policy. So that's my answer to your question about what's next for us, is how we start to shift up our gaze to the level of structural change that's necessary nationally, but also in our local communities.
Yeah, I find it very interesting in this time where everybody's claiming they want to throw money and support Black businesses and Black initiatives, that I've gotten several phone calls from foundations saying, are we supporting the right things? And it's like, is it the shiny thing, or are you asking the right questions about what you're really supporting so that the money goes to sustain the programs that actually have impact? I've wondered if you guys were kind of having the same experience too. Okay. Thank you. This was great. I took a lot of notes. Thank you.
So, and I want to say, when we got to the issue about the money, when we finally got Kellogg to give us the loan loss reserve,
Okay.
The problem we ran into is that racial equity is not considered charitable by the Internal Revenue Service. So we had to change how we named this thing so it could be tax deductible for them to do this. And you can support small business, but racial equity is not considered a charitable cause. So talk about the structural change. So how do we change tax policy so that you can invest in Black businesses? We can start with that.
Got it. Thank you.
There was one question from Kendra Key. Is the service area of the SPV limited to New Orleans?
Yes.
That's okay. Because you know, Ashley and Judith have a little brother now who's gonna be bothering them about about what they're doing in New Orleans because it's worked. Are there any other questions? We got about 4 minutes left in this segment. So look, some of the things that really stood out to me was one, I didn't know how you all came into this work, the lens. And one of the things that we're dealing with in Birmingham is the increase in violent crimes. And so this is economic development work that you all done came out of New Orleans, came through the lens of reducing murders in New Orleans. I think that was fascinating. I didn't realize that.
I do want to share one thing about that. Linked to this notion of narrative change, it's a fine line that we have to walk. The easiest message to sell to legacy business leaders, so our white elite business leaders, is if you're worried about crime, actually our current mayor says nothing stops a bullet like a job, right? Underneath that is, if you're worried about crime, give these folks a job. We have to be a little bit careful with that though, because that's feeding into Black men are scary. And if we don't save them, if we don't help them, they will do us harm. And just as a wife to a Black man and a mommy of 2 little Black boys, like I've had to really stop and think about that. We have to be careful with the language that we are using when what we're really trying to say is what I said, which is you're as rich as you're gonna be because you don't care about everybody else. You keep, even as you're worried about your own wealth, you're limiting your own potential, your family's potential by writing folks off. Because we could, instead of a crime rate, like the Brookings Institute did research that was like showing data around like young kids and their patent potential, right? All of our kids hold the same potential. It's just who's interrupted in their journey and who's not. Anyway, I just wanted to say something about we have to be careful with the narrative that even as we're trying to really create an even playing field, that we don't buy into the stereotypes and a very harmful narrative. I never understood how scary Black men were to other folks in the community until we centered Black men as our measure of success. And so I just want to warn about that. Like, we led with 52% of Black men aren't working, which means, and then we showed you your employment data and like we have a whole resource for you. We have a solution to your challenge. It was only then that it was like, yeah, but we pick anybody else. Like that's the solution. And then there were these layers underneath it, rather than recognizing like truly the fullness of the potential of all of our folks, which then unlocks the potential of our economy and all of that. So it was an interesting and an important lens, but if I played back the tape, I bet you there'd be moments early on that I wasn't pleased now to see the kinds of conversations we were willing to have, or even that I participated in, because that's a tricky lens. That's all I just want to be, we should be careful.
Part of what we learned when we did the survey, these 38,600 Black men, they weren't all uneducated, didn't finish high school, they had college degrees and master's degrees, and they ran the spectrum. They weren't unemployed because they were uneducated. They were unemployed because they were Black.
And the top, like the 5%, just that narrow top 5, who had all the things, all the shiny sheets of paper, they still only got called back for interviews 50% of the time, right? So anyway, there's just we have to think about all of it.
Yeah. This is holistic. I think what has the 2 things that I've written down is addressing structural change. Well, the 2 things I'm gonna say anyway, addressing structural change, and then creating a space amongst the different players and pieces of an ecosystem so that it can name issues and figure out a way to move forward. So yeah, but thank you. Thank you all for joining us on this morning and sharing this work in New Orleans. I'm sure that I will be in touch shortly as we debrief from this and figure out how do we work together to move forward. So this is a Zoom, and at 10:20 I had a break scheduled for 10:20 to 10:30, but since everybody's at their home and in the office, you can govern yourselves accordingly. We're going to go ahead and we're going to keep moving to our next. All right, bye-bye. We're going to move to our next architect, Nia. And so Nia Richardson with Kansas City, and she's going to share with us, how their ecosystem is centered around technology and what they do to support the entrepreneur community there.
Good morning. Yes, it's still morning time. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. My camera will freeze up. Unfortunately, my technology sucks some days. So please forgive me if my face is kind of looking a certain way, but I will do my best to clear it out. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Nia Richardson. I work with the City of Kansas City. I'm the assistant to the director for small business and entrepreneurship. I run what's called our KC BizCare office. KC BizCare has been around since 2009. I started with the city in 2018 as the new manager for the office in hopes to advance it. Before coming with the city, I actually worked with my father, who has a civil and structural engineering business that he started when I was like 5 years old. It sustained us as a family. It put me through college, and it's sustaining them now. So although I was not an entrepreneur from that sense where I ran the business, I was bred by one, and then I had to work for one, and then I didn't really get a paycheck from them, a real paycheck in a W-2 until after college. So for about 13, 14 years, I worked with my father as his business development person. So I was heavily involved in procurement with the city. I did our certifications. I went out and negotiated contract opportunities. So I know the world and what it's like. And I was usually the one arguing and hollering at the city, that's City Hall across the street from me, about minority participation on contracts, about goal setting and opportunities. As I came into this particular position, I was recruited by my now retired boss, Rick Usher, who was an assistant city manager. But he picked me up in the community and the work that I was doing around what's called our Central City Economic Development 1/8 cent sales tax. So the community pushed forth a sales tax for long-term economic development because we were upset about the lack of investment by the city at that time. And so there was a citywide vote. We passed it. I was a part of the campaign. But my job on that campaign that I was very worried about was, what is it and what can we really do with it? And so I did a presentation during an urban summit meeting, which is a meeting of Black leaders, politicians, business owners in the community that meet every Friday morning for breakfast. And I was doing this presentation, and that's kind of how I got recruited to the city. No, my father was not happy to see me leave to the city, but now that he understands what I actually do, he's very, very proud of what I'm doing. So I'm very, very happy to make him proud for that. In my work with the city and the KC BizCare office, I have not seen this office exist in any other city so far. What we do in this office, I share space with our business license team, which helps create a one-stop shop to support people who are in Kansas City looking to start a business around business registration, permitting, and licensing. If anyone was to ask me the question and say, what's missing in our ecosystem? It's the city. You can't, any ESO, entrepreneurial support organizations, what we call them, you can't license them, you can't give them zonings, you can't permit them. So why am I on the side of the ecosystem and not in the middle of the ecosystem? I am the hub. And because I am in here with our business license team by default, I'm going to see just about every single formal business, not informal, but formal business come through this office, because by default they think, oh, I need to get a business license. That's the first thing I need to do. No, you have to establish a business and then license it. These are things that are not being taught in any of these ecosystem workshops, programs, anything. I'm usually the one being called in to teach it, because usually these leaders are not, it's not a part of their programming, and they're not being taught this. So that was one of the initiatives that I definitely wanted to make sure that I did as a part of my role with the city, was to really enhance the ecosystem by really pushing forth what we do as a city and putting the business registration, permitting, and licensing process at the center of it. Because you can teach them how to do a business and write a business plan all day long, but it's not legit until they come see me. And from seeing me, they can now get access to becoming a vendor with the city. They can get contracts with the city, and everything that I help them do is tangible. So by the time they get done seeing me, you have your state registration, you have your EIN, you have any permits. For example, if you are a restaurant, you will have your health permit. You'll know where to go to get that. You need a Missouri sales tax if you sell things. You need a zoning clearance so I can know where you are. And if it's legal for you to operate, like you can't have a strip club at home, that's not legal. So things like that is what we help businesses do, and they are tangible. And these documents are things that I educate them on to understand what they need to do next. So after you see me, you can open a bank account. You are a formal entrepreneur. And many of our entrepreneurs we discovered in the pandemic were not fully legit. And so they had a hard time accessing any local relief that we had, because it required them to have a business license. They needed to know that you were a legit business. And so just to give you an idea of the impact that we have just in this office, and I am trying to rehire for my office, but now it's just down to me, but I had a staff of 2, and I'm getting ready to hire someone. What we do, what the impact that we had when I came into this office and looked at our data and lack thereof, this office was seeing somewhere to 2,000 to 3,000 people a year. That's just the biz care side of it. Business license would see, and as far as walk-ins go, we see anywhere from 300 to 600 people a month that walk through this door, depending on the season. If it's renewal time, our busiest season is January to maybe April, because that's when you have to renew your business license. Everybody's starting a new business as their resolution, things like that. So that's our real busy time. And just in COVID, we saw those numbers in interactions and walk-ins, and even with limited capacity to our office of 3 people in the lobby, maybe 2 to 3 months into COVID-19. Since the onset of the pandemic, together, BizCare and Business License team, which is under the revenue department for the city, I'm under the city manager's office, so I have a clear contact. There's only one person between me and the top person. We have helped and assisted to help license over 4,000 new businesses here in Kansas City. There are 28,000+ licensed businesses in Kansas City, and there are several thousands more who have not even started the process of really getting their business fully legit. And that is what we do. A part of my work since coming into the city and coming into this role with this office that I noticed was that we didn't have any data. And how is it that I'm seeing all these people and nobody's really capturing this data? And the system that we were using was a good system for ESOs or entrepreneur support organizations in Kansas City. It didn't really work for what I do, because I don't do anything like anybody else in this ecosystem. And so by chance, I was able to identify a startup developer that is literally customizing and building a system for me to gather that technology. So there's a CRM and data system on the back end where I can begin to pull things together, and we'll soon be able to give a clear state of the state of small businesses in Kansas City. Then I will be able to break that down by demographics. I can also break that down by certification, because I'm in the city. I can get business license data. I can get my certification data. I can get the data that I get from people that I see through my own intake, as well as any programs or initiatives that I do. And because of this technology, we've been able to really go and enhance a lot of the work that we do and how we really help entrepreneurs. Every day, I'm talking to at least 5 or more entrepreneurs and helping them get their business started. I don't see that with any of my partners. If you don't know much about Kansas City, Missouri, there's Kansas City, Missouri, and there's a Kansas City, Kansas. Anything that you see about Kansas City is about us. The Chiefs, all of that, that is us. We are much larger than Kansas City, Kansas, but in Kansas City, Missouri, we have the Kauffman Foundation in our backyard, and many of you who are in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, you are aware of them. We have over 400 or so organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs, programs, accelerators, cohorts. Our local organization, there's a local organization called SourceLink that has resource partners in over 100 different cities and countries. But our local affiliate of SourceLink is Casey SourceLink, which oversees our ecosystem of ESOs. And so I want to be very clear that those are just organizations, programs. What I really need for my businesses is back office support, the professionals, legal, accounting, marketing. We spend too much time forcing the entrepreneurs to do everything instead of saying, here's what you need to know and be aware of, and here's how you build those resources around you. You cannot do everything. So why do we force that onto our entrepreneurs? It doesn't make sense to me. Why aren't we helping them to align them with the people they need to get to the next level? They cannot be experts on everything. They are good at what they do. They barely can run a business. So give them the resources so that they can do what they love and have their business sustain and be a benefit to the community by hiring and so forth and so on. So I'm going to show you, I don't have a PowerPoint today, but I'm going to show you a little bit of the technology that I've been able to build with a company called Quali out of Colorado. And Quali came to me after I put out a call through our startup and residency program. And so a startup and residency program is a way that as cities, we can be innovative because our traditional procurement process does not allow us to say, hey, here's my problem, here's who I am, here's my problem, here's the solutions I would like to have. Can somebody tell me how they can do that for me? And I can't do that through my traditional procurement process. I have to know what it is and it has to be on the market versus saying someone built something with me. And so we did a startup and residency program, about 6 departments participated. I put out a call, I had about 26 responses, and Quali rose to the top through this. And I have a 3-year contract with them to work with me, and they are literally customizing the system for me. And so in this work that we do, what's very, very important to me is the customer service. As city and government, we are not trusted, and I want to reestablish the trust, reestablish the relationships with our entrepreneurs so that I am a go-to for them and they can ask me anything. I am your liaison in the city. If someone's not treating you right in the city or in this ecosystem, tell me, because I have the power to get it right. And I think we need to flex more of that power in doing so. One of the big challenges that I saw, again, besides the data and coming into this ecosystem or trying to build out an ecosystem for us, was the fact that, again, there wasn't a lot of tangible resources or support. There is a lack of one-on-one technical assistance. You'll be surprised if you ask all these organizations that you work with, how many of them actually have data and actually support through one-on-one technical assistance, not workshops, not cohorts, because that is not on the entrepreneur's time, that's on your time. We need to be on their time. When they're ready to start, let's go. So you will be very surprised, because I was, to find out that nobody was really capturing the data as they should, that makes sense for us to understand, one, how I can educate my council, my mayor, my city manager about how to better set policies that support entrepreneurs, but also how to support my partners in the ecosystem with data they need so that they can go after grants and be successful. Because what I don't want them to get the impression of is that the city is a foundation. I am not a foundation. I am here to do what we do as far as procurement and things like that, that really support small businesses. I am willing to support and invest in organizations or programs that support our small businesses, that align with what we do. But I am not here to throw money at any new idea that you have. Because what I also find is that we have a lot of entrepreneurs within the ecosystem, which are called entrepreneurs, is what I'm finding out. And they treat support or small business development support as a business. And they come up with all these great ideas, but does it really solve the problem? Does it really have the impact? No. And I can say that as I know that there are some 400 plus organizations within our ecosystem. Kansas City is still number 49 out of 50 major cities when it comes to minority entrepreneurship. So that's a huge red flag for me. So what are we doing and what are we not doing right? And a lot of times we like to point and say, okay, businesses, what do you need and what's wrong with you? Instead of saying, what are we not doing well and what can we do better? What resources do we have to support our entrepreneurs? I will not refer someone to you if I do not trust that you can give them the customer support and service, and that you are not wasting their time by saying, oh, I'm gonna help you do this and that, and it does not benefit them. Also, when we are planning with our businesses, business planning and things like that, I think it's very important that we plan with capital, because the outcomes are going to be a lot different than when they have some money to actually plan with versus planning with nothing. And so those were a lot of the challenges that I saw coming in. And of course, my big goal with coming with the city is, of course, to make Kansas City the most entrepreneurial city in America. And that was an initiative pushed forth by our larger Greater Kansas City Chamber in 2011, and was kind of laxed. And so I've come into this role and say, okay, hey, I think we can do that. I think we have a great resource in this office, and here's what we can do for it. And so I'm going to show you the site, our back end, and then I'm going to talk to you about what my next steps are, because we did submit for the SBA Community Navigator Grant, and which I thought was I thought they got it right this time with that grant, not with PPP, but with this grant, I think they got it right. With their hub and spoke model, with their Community Navigator Grant. And I'm gonna show you a little bit about what we proposed and how we are, regardless if we get the grant or not, we are going to do this, and how we are leading our entrepreneurs towards something. If I'm not leading you to access something, I'm wasting your time. If you're not accessing capital or contracts, that's my two things, then I am wasting your time. And I'm not the best support for you. Let's find someone else that can really assist you. So as you are thinking about building your ecosystem, because a lot of ecosystem exists, but how do you build one around what you do? How do you become the hub to your spokes is what I'm going to pretty much talk to you about today. But the ecosystem, and like I was telling Lord when we had our conversation, because I got recruited to do this after literally one conversation with Lord, because he's not going to tell you that, but it is not about necessarily the technology. It's about building the ecosystem and having the technology be an instrument that supports what you do, because you cannot understand what's going on, see trends, or really detect what's really wrong without the data. Whether it's quantitative or qualitative, both are needed and are absolutely necessary. And so we are diving deeper into becoming more data analysts and support and one-on-one technical assistance support for our entrepreneurs. So I'm going to see if I can share, and I can, yes. Any questions so far for me while I get this going? Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. What you see here, bizcare.kcmo.gov is a new site that we developed in the pandemic to support our entrepreneurs. And I'm gonna stop my video so it doesn't distract from anything. KC BizCare, again, we are the one-stop shop. And so we had to pivot just like our small businesses and create our virtual one-stop shop for doing business in Kansas City. Like I said, because of COVID, I'm limited to capacity in our office and I cannot see people face to face. So I had to figure out very quickly, and thank God I had my support from Quali, my developer, to pivot and build this out for us. We launched it officially in January of this year, maybe towards the end. And then as soon as we launched it, we had to immediately respond to figure out how we can support our entrepreneurs to accessing capital through the PPP program. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about that as well. And so here with the BizCare site, again, we created quick tools. We made it sleek and simple, not over saturated with information. There will be some pages where it looks like a lot, but I use this as a tool. If I'm talking to someone like I'm talking to you today, this is what I will walk you through. So a lot of times businesses come to me and say, hey, I did one thing and I don't know what the next step is. Is there a checklist? I don't know what to do. Can I get a business license? You get questions from all over the place. And I start them here. Pull up this website, and I've created different guides and quick links for you to really get started. So our first quick link that I always send people to is our Start a Business in KCMO guide. And hold on one second. This is going to come up a little bit differently because I'm logged in. So what happens is you can go here to our Start a Business guide, and what you can do in there is actually, there's a guide that just kind of walks people through, okay, here's how you start a business. Here's the name of the business. You got to know, you got to set it up with the Secretary of State. Here's your options if you're a sole proprietor or if you have incorporated. Having people understand those things is very, very important. As a government employee, I cannot legally advise people on how to structure their business. So what I do is make sure that I give you enough information to ask the right questions. It's not all the time that I want to give people the answer. I want to educate them on how to ask the right questions, what things are called. Here's your articles of organization. Here's what your EIN is. It's like a social security number for your business, things like that. And so I'm gonna walk you through how I educate or give technical assistance to folks when they start a business. So when they sign up for a checklist, here's what this kind of looks like. They create a profile. And so we have their contact information. They have a request, but what they really see on the back end is a customized checklist based on the type of business that they're starting. Again, if you're a restaurant, it's going to pop up different things for permits through our health department. If you're selling liquor, regulated industries, if you have a security company, you need to get a police clearance, like all those little minor things that people are not educated on because no one's teaching you this, we help them do. And so we've simplified the process by creating this checklist. And on each checklist, you get the links directly to the application and the contact information for the agencies. I am the city, I'm not the state, I'm not the IRS, but I will do the best that I can to try to guide you through it, but I can't see their systems. And so again, I walk people through this, and you have to have a way of simplifying it so that it's not intimidating for them. And so I explain it very simply like this. Starting a business is like having a kid. The first thing you need to do is go have the kid. So think of the Missouri Secretary of State as the hospital. This is where you name the kid. This is where you have the kid. And when you're done having a kid, you get the birth certificate, which is your articles of organization. And after you have accomplished that, then you go on and you get that social security number for that kid. That's your EIN. That's how you really need to process it, because people get it confused and thinking, oh, it's a tax thing. No, it is. But in the simple way that I can really explain it to you, it's just a social security number for your business. Because if you're a sole proprietor, you have the option of getting one. Otherwise, you can use your social security number. So these are little small things that I explain to people. If you're selling something, you need a Missouri sales tax. If you have employees and you have withholdings, you do that through the same process. Also, after you've had the kid, you give them a social security number. Where's the kid going to live? So where's your business operating from? That's what a zoning is. And so where you operate from, like I said, you can't have a strip club at home. You can't sell medical marijuana within certain lengths of schools and things of that sort. So zoning tells me a lot. What I've learned in Kansas City, and as I've talked with other cities, is that Kansas City is very unique in how fast you can start a business. When I was talking to the city of Miami, it takes them about 30 to 90 days just to get a zoning. I can do you a zoning in maybe 5 to 10, 15 minutes. It really depends on what you're requesting. But what I saw in this process, and because I'm tracking the data of zoning, I can now begin to pull data together about the influx of home-based businesses that we're seeing. People don't understand that, you can operate a home-based business, and in Kansas City, you can do just about any business from home. You just can't sell direct from home. You can't have stuff outside your house. You can't have trucks outside your home. Like your home is not a storefront, but you can office. You can sell online. You can do what's called cottage food law, which is where you can bake certain things from home, because technically you can't cook in your kitchen and sell to the public, but there are certain things you can do, like bake cakes and cookies from home and not be required to have a health permit. And based on the state law, if you exceed $50,000 in revenue, then you have to go beyond that and then go through the traditional process. Little tips like that, people don't know. And it helps them to know how to get set up and legit. And when they do, some people, because they do have a business license, their client base grows because now they're seen as trustworthy. And so again, very quickly, we walk them through everything all the way up to getting a business license, all of which they can do online. And this is mobile friendly. There is no technology that I will develop that is not mobile friendly in order to make sure that I am not creating a larger gap with the digital divide. I know my people have phones. And if I can get them some Wi-Fi access, they can do everything, sign up for the checklist. Half of this, if not majority of the online applications, they can do from their phone. And so again, before COVID-19, someone could come into my office and I could get their business. Again, we have public computers that we would sit them in front of. We would walk them and just tell them where to go. But I could help someone get a business started from registration with the state all the way through to a business license in an hour or less. And it's very inexpensive to start a business in Kansas City. Again, we do strongly advise for people to get an accountant and or an attorney to advise them through this process. But typically they may charge someone $1,500, $2,000. And that's fine because they can do it right. A lot of people use Zoom, not Zoom, LegalZoom. I had a lady put me on the phone one day and I was like, ma'am, I don't think this is legal, but I'll sit and listen, and just got a chance to hear what they were being offered. And was able to give her some ease to say, yes, these are all the things that you absolutely need. And if you are not comfortable, it is very good for you to have someone do that for you to make sure it's done right. But I want to make sure that you get all the documents that you are required to have. For example, if you start an LLC, you need an operating agreement. You need to have a business bank account. You need to have insurance. Those are things that are not required to get a business license, but they are required for you to operate your business here in Kansas City. Again, none of these things are taught through our entrepreneurs. And so again, we've created this site to really help put some ease to that. And we are centralizing a lot of resources here. So again, this is our original business registration page where we kind of directed a lot of people to before we created the checklist. And again, I would just walk people through it virtually. And it just goes through everything that they would need to consider or have depending on what type of business that they're starting. For example, if you have contractors, a contractor needs to have a business license so they can apply for a contractor's license so that they can pull permits. Little things like that make a big difference in someone's success. Other things that we have on our page that are pretty recent, I get a lot of people who are coming from out of state. So again, I'm very, very close to KCK. It's literally a 5-minute or a river separating us. So I get a lot of people from Kansas coming over to do business on our side. And again, those are foreign entities. So how do you get set up because you're coming from another state? We have a complete guide to walk people through that. Again, they can sign up for the checklist here. But again, we created this so that it simplifies it. And not only does my entrepreneurs use it, my ESOs will use this as they guide their entrepreneurs. Because again, I love for them to prepare them before they come and see me. And I love to prepare these businesses before they go see business license or anyone else in City Hall so that they know what to ask, they can move very swiftly, and they can be very efficient in getting their business started. Some of the other things that we looked at, of course, is procurement. I want people to access contracts. I want you to know where that is in City Hall. I want you to know what procurement is. You know, if you are doing business with the city and contracting, that is called procurement. And then we created this simplified way of saying, okay, here's some steps that are going to come up in that. And definitely make sure you have your business license. That is required for you to become a vendor with the city. You know, learn about what the city buys. Right now, procurement only has a paper application. I have another developer who is putting together an online application for you to become a vendor that you should be able to do from your phone. You can upload documents from your phone. You can take pictures of things, anything that's required. Again, we are trying to make it as easy and accessible for our businesses. Because a lot of people are intimidated by the city processes. And as cities, it doesn't benefit us to make it harder for them to do what they need to do, because if I can't get them set up properly and get them a business license and get their taxes set up, they're not going to pay any taxes. So we actually do ourselves harm by making it almost impossible for any individual to work with the city or to get what they need from the city. And so my job and what I've been doing is simplifying that for my businesses, regardless of the department. And so I will go to them, give them feedback, and also work with them to ease that process for my entrepreneurs. And then I centralize that. And so again, putting the information out there, walking people through the information. Some can read it and get it. Many will get started, call me, and then I will walk them through everything just like this. Again, I also notify people about our certification workshops. I do participate on behalf of the BizCare office in our monthly certifications. Kansas City is very unique because we almost have a consortium and single application. So in a single application, someone can get an MBE, WBE, DBE. We have a consortium with St. Louis and a couple of other counties here around Missouri. We have the ACDBE, which is the concessions. Right now, we are building out our new airport, and I'm actually on a selection committee for the concessions and looking at the small businesses that may potentially go into the airport. So I'm very aggressive with these developers about that. But getting my businesses prepared to be able to take advantage of those different things is what my job is here to do. And so giving them access and giving them that information is what we do here. So again, we have our certification for our race and gender programs, but we have a race and gender neutral program. And if you have not considered this in your city, please do. Small local business enterprise is a municipal effort. under this program, I can break up big contracts. I can set aside contracts. And what we are doing moving forward, I'm working with the new director for our human relations department, which I think is going to be called it's going to be our new equity office, on how do we increase the threshold of these contracts. Right now for SLBE, it's like 117,000 for about, I think, professional services and about 300,000 for construction. I know working from the other side, I would pass these up several times because it wasn't worth my time to invest in putting the proposal together, paying for the prints, because those aren't cheap for us to do, and then submitting that. But it is worth the business's time to compete amongst their peers and not the big firms. And so this is another way that the city, if we increase that threshold, we can increase contract opportunities for our small businesses. And 99% of our small businesses that are certified as SLBE are minorities and women, because it's almost automatic that if you are, if you're approved for MWBE, you're definitely going to be approved for SLBE. And so again, understanding our certifications and things like that and how people can access that to get more contracts is what I'm trying to lead people through. So when they leave me, again, they can get a bank account, they now know how to access contracts with the city, things of that sort. I try to educate them as much as possible. Another thing that people are not aware about, the Kansas City has a public art program, 1% public art program. My artists are entrepreneurs. Ironically, before I came with the city, I served on our Municipal Arts Commission for about 7 years under the previous mayor. I was appointed to this committee and learned a lot about art, entrepreneurship, and how my artists are accessing or not accessing it. So for example, with our airport project, that is about a $2 billion project. 1% of that was set aside for artists. And I think that came out to about $6 to $8 million, somewhere in that range. It is the largest 1% art project the city has. It's went into 3 rounds. And in the last round, I got approached by the administrators to say, hey, we want the last round to be all about local artists. And I said, okay, your challenge is going to be your local artists don't know about procurement and how to become vendors. And so what we did, we set up workshops, but I created this guide with my developer. Again, they got to go through the same process as any other entrepreneur, but I've given them something specific for them. Learn how to start a business in Kansas City, registering their business so they can be licensed, and then say, okay, here's what you really need to know. NAICS codes. Hey, I'm gonna give you a cheat sheet. This is what your NAICS code is. What does all of that mean? Understanding city requirements on contracts. How can I best prepare you so that you know what questions to ask so that you can be successful in doing so? And so that's pretty much what we put here. The most important thing I did was to show them where to find the contract opportunities. I know how to do it because of the work that I used to do before coming with the city. When I came into the city and had a couple of discussions with our certified businesses, many of them were not taking advantage of their certification because they simply didn't know where to identify the opportunities or how to identify the opportunities. So I'm taking that knowledge and I'm spreading it on to the businesses so that they can better obtain those contract opportunities. And then of course, just understanding how to respond to these RFPs and RFQs because our artists are not familiar with that. So again, this is just a way that we are trying to centralize information and go from there. So I talked about community resources. KC SourceLink has this resource navigator. Again, I added that to our site. Like I said, there are over 400 organizations that support our entrepreneurs, chambers, cohorts, accelerators, art organizations, CDFIs. Kaufman has the Million Cups where people can do pitches. There are so many. People need to know where to go. And so that people understand that there is an ecosystem out there, because I'm usually the first to introduce it to them. Here is where I kind of start them to say, just look around and see what's out there, ask me more questions, and I will find you that connection. And so again, this is just the front end of the system and the resources that we are providing for our entrepreneurs. This is just phase 1 of it. This didn't even look like it when we first got started, and we're still enhancing that. We did do a small business big voice listening tour. We did a tour in each and every district in our city with the council people and got a wealth load of information. And of course, the biggest thing that we found was that a lot of these small businesses did not know that they could do business with the city. And many of them pivoted to do business with the city to help survive during the pandemic, or are still doing business with the city. And that's why the procurement one was very, very important. So let's look at the back end. Here's my dashboard. Like I said, we started this in January. I can now see the different type of businesses as they're getting started. I'm still customizing the dashboard so that I can get more data here. But again, we see a lot of people who come through here, and many of them don't even call me. Somebody's referring them and they're getting started. So I can see if people are moving through the process, how quickly they're moving through the process, where they are, where they're getting stuck. They can ask me questions, request help. I can see all those things. Again, we do zoning out of courtesy. This is typically done through my planning department, but out of courtesy, I do it to help create a one-stop shop and save my businesses a lot of time. We are working on a new tool, which is our interactions. So now I can log phone calls, emails, things like that. And we're going to enhance this with some of the work that we propose to the SBA of how to really log other type of interactions, counseling time that we spent with people, things of that sort. Other analytics that are important to me, again, understanding my different types of KPIs of how people are coming to us, what requests they're making. This also helps me to kind of manage my staff on the back end and who's doing what impact they're having, how many people they're seeing, and then what programs are really getting the most requests and pickup. Traffic, my communications department definitely wants to know what my traffic looks like. And so I'm able to communicate that to them. But again, all of this is just the starting point. We are really, really working to enhance that. But what's most important? Data. So this is where we're really playing around with how we really get the data. And two main things that we've done is, we did a survey during the second round of PPP, which was like May 2020, is when we did this COVID-19 survey of small and minority businesses. From this survey, what we found was that those businesses that had business banking or business association relationships were 38% more likely to get approved for capital and ask for 8.3 times more money. And so with that survey, what we played around with, what my developers are playing around with is, what does that data look like? How can I break it down? How can I see it real time? And how can I get it to my officials for them to understand? So again, we are, playing with all of this. If I just wanted to see the minority businesses that responded, the women-owned businesses, well, break it down for me by demographic. These are different tools that we're playing with. So I'm gonna just speed through so you can see some of the data that we were collecting in that survey just to kind of get started. That was our first kick at it. Again, we had the site and the system set up, but we didn't have the site live to the public until about January. And so what we did during that time was do things like this, which was play around with some data, get some surveys, because at that time, everybody was surveying our businesses. It was complete survey fatigue. My survey was not short, but I am intentional about the data that I'm trying to collect. And again, we were able to really see how people were accessing capital. And we asked a lot of questions. And then many times we asked in detail, who do you even bank with? And so we were able to get a lot of that information from here. And so like different tools like this to understanding the long and short-term needs of small businesses in different districts. That way I can give more targeted information to my council people when they are asking about different things. So again, this is just some things that we were playing around with and we're still trying to build out as far as what that data looks like, how we utilize that data. This is data that if I'm working with a partner and they're helping me put this data in, I'm going to share this data with them. I'm going to make sure they have everything that they need to go present, talk about small businesses in Kansas City. And I don't always have to be the person speaking. I want to, build them up just like I would my small businesses, because what I've also learned in this industry is that our entrepreneur support organizations need the same support as our entrepreneurs. They need money, they need to build capacity. And what I can offer is another way for them to build up their capabilities by educating them on city processes. And so again, this is just some of the stuff that we were playing around with. But again, this is where we were able to capture that access to capital and that trend that we were seeing. And so what it told us is that relationships were essential to our businesses. Back office support is essential to our businesses. And so I'm going to show you another example of how that really played a part. And so again, PPP, we created a PPP prep program. And again, I can't show it to you because it has me logged in. So let me log out. So we were introduced to a model, PPP prep out of Philly. And I can't remember the name of the organization, but a Black woman ran it. And so the model came to us. We took the technology that we have with this quality system And in 3 days, I was able to get up a intake form where we centralized, everyone would come here. I had my partners, the Heartland Black Chamber, KC, Kansas City Prospect Business Association. Prospect Avenue is a corridor that runs through the Black community, the east side of Kansas City, predominantly our 3rd and 5th district. It is one of the longest and most unique corridors because it's like almost 50-50 split of residential and commercial. And it is very underdeveloped, and it's been a very strategic focus to redevelop that area and make a prime commercial or even a cultural district for our businesses and our communities here in Kansas City, predominantly in the Black community, which is like an 80% population of Black people in the Prospect corridor. So between these two partners, just two, and with a little bit of money, we probably raised about $30,000 to $25,000. And that was banks or folks or our sponsors here giving us about $5,000 a piece. And what we did was we centralized the intake. And then what happens is my partners will pick it up, follow up with them, do one-on-one technical assistance with them, which is pretty much application prep. That is a lot. That's a big, big thing that our businesses need is application prep for, again, I'm helping with application prep for a business license. I help you with application prep to become a vendor. Here we were helping with application prep for them to access capital. And I think we should try this similar model. And I'm proposing that with any banks that we work with. What I will say about PPP that we learned is that PPP was really not set up well when majority of your small businesses, and I think for Black owned businesses, I think there's about 2.6 million Black owned businesses, don't quote me on this one, and about 2.3 were non-employer based. So if you have a program set up on employees, how is it going to help the businesses that are non-employer based? And if you look national wide, I think the percentages were very, very close. It was still about an 80% that were non-employer based businesses. So that's why you saw this money go to certain people and not others. And in the last round of PPP at the 11th hour, they changed the rules. And so we were able to help more people, sole proprietors, non-employer based businesses get access to capital, but it didn't help them hire. It didn't help them grow. It only helped them kind of stay afloat and keep their head above water. So there's a lot of feedback we would love to give the SBA about the PPP, but there's a lot that we've learned from it that when we're looking at how we set up capital, especially around helping our businesses become employer-based businesses by one, paying yourself. A lot of our business owners do not pay themselves in their business. They pay the expenses, but they're not giving themselves a paycheck or a W-2. Nor are they hiring others. So if you can't hire yourself, how are you going to hire others? If this is your full-time job, this is your full-time gig, this is not a side hustle for you. So again, with PPP Prep, we took that model that we saw out of Philly, we put together the back end part of it, and let me show you what that looks like. So for my partners, they would come in and they would only see this side. Here are folks that were coming in applying for PPP. A lot of these people did not qualify because they were new businesses. And for PPP, you had to have already been established by February 15, 2020. And so again, what we were able to develop is now I can get a bunch of data on you. So our intake, I know when you were established, how many employees you have, if you're certified, do you have a business license? If not, I can help you with that. If you're registered with the state, because that was a requirement. Are they home-based? How are they structured? What is their ownership? What's their ethnicity? Where do they live? Are they in LMI areas? Because again, depending on what I'm going after, now I got data that can support that. How much revenue were they making? Who are you banking with? Do you have a relationship with your banker? Do you have your taxes prepared? This is information that my partners needed to know. How do I set my partners up for success so that they can better support the small businesses? And so what they did, they would look at this, review it. Again, we can make internal notes, we can have conversations with them, and they would follow up with them. What the business owner got was a customized checklist. I know from my intake, you're a first-time borrower. Here's the application if you want to look at that. And here's everything else you need to know. Thank you, the PPP prep program in Philly. We were able to utilize that. Everything you need to know. So if I needed to meet with you virtually and walk you through everything and how to prepare, here's how we do it. But what my partners did was they set them down. Majority of them were face-to-face, and they set them down with an accountant who we gave a small fee to. We couldn't pay them a full amount, but we negotiated a reasonable fee with them to sit with this business owner while we provide a free service to them to get that accounting support. At minimum, whether they got money or not, what happened is that they established in a relationship with an organization they probably didn't know anything about, now an accountant, and now maybe even a bank, because my partners have relationships with banks where they were walking people through it. So again, this is what the end user got. What resources can I give you? How can I help you be successful? How can I help you ask the right questions? So forth and so on. So let me show you what that looks like data-wise for us. Again, still playing around with how we want this to look, but they're kind of, test piloting some different ways of how we can present the data. So I know what applications were started, which ones were completed, but again, we don't have all our data in yet. I know 85% did not apply for the first round, 93% did not apply for the second round. I now know when they were established. I now know the industries in which were best populated, how they were structured. I can now share data about who they're banking with. Now I know what banks I need to go talk to or who I need to go fuss at. Because again, I am your liaison. You are, as a city, I am here to protect you. I'm here for you. Do they have business bank accounts? Do they have relationships with their bankers? 72% did not. Half of them, 70%, weren't even sure because of that lack of relationship if they had PPP through their bank, if they were accepting that. Very telling story. Again, different things we're getting to play with their revenue, the full-time or part-time employees, if they had a business license. And I can, break down that data in so many different ways and view it in so many other ways. This is what I like and what I need. I'm a data person. I'm a data girl. I want to see it. I want to talk about it because this is my MO. I can shut you down all day long if I got the data. So if you come against me, please be prepared. Because if you don't have no data, I'm going to shut you down. And then we just have to move on to the next one. So for anyone else, because what I've learned in coming to this as a new person in this ecosystem, this terminology that they like to use, they didn't have the data. And when I had to go against them about things and say, you're not doing this right, or this does not work well for my businesses, I had to have data to support that. Because if I didn't have it, they could keep making these excuses of why they were or weren't supporting the businesses. And so again, this is just the back end of it, some tools, we're playing around with different things and maps. I'm a visual person as well. I want to be able to give visuals to anyone that I'm talking to. So like I said, we're playing around with maps and categories and being able to map out our businesses here in Kansas City. So if you want to know where we were on the map, we're the heart of America. And so again, Kansas City and Kansas, or this is Kansas City. There's literally a line between us. Zoning, we want to find easier ways, following behind the city, Miami. They had a cool tool that we're trying to figure out if we can replicate, where people could really hover over an area and really see what the zoning was for whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so again, my map will begin to highlight, if there's a residential, industrial, commercial area, things like that. But we want to get it to where they can put in an address and on their own say, okay, oh, it's zoned for this, I can do this here, or I need to follow up and ask more questions. So these are things we're working on the back end that we're kind of playing with. And I'm still working with them on what my dashboard is going to ultimately look like. But ultimately, I want to come in and know how many are home-based, how many are commercial-based. I want to know the demographics. I want to know how many new businesses we have. I want to know how many we have licensed. I want to know how many are actually certified. And I want to break it down by each demographic of certification. So those are the different things that I'm playing around with coming from the standpoint as a city. What do we need to know and kind of have prepared to better support our businesses, to be better advocates for our businesses, and to support the organizations that support our businesses. And so I couldn't show you this the first time, but again, the Start a Business Guide looks like this. My boss wants me to kind of reframe it a little bit so that it doesn't look as intimidating. But again, when I'm talking you through it, this is everything you're going to need to know or ask questions about. And I just want this to be a reference point for people to be able to get what they need. I can't legally advise you on certain things, but I can give you the information to understand the basics of it and know how to ask the right questions. And so that is where we are. Where we would like to go, if you would give me 1 second, I'm going to stop sharing so I can get another document up. Any questions so far while I get another document up so I can talk about next steps for what we're doing? Let's get this moving.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about your model. Is it something that's replicable across like Birmingham with, if we're interested in something like that, is it something that your provider is willing or you to share?
Yeah, so I was actually going to show you a model of what we proposed for the SBA grant, which is going to be our model, our hub and spoke model, how we're going to operate. So can everyone see my screen? Okay, so it's not a hub and spoke model, but this is what we presented or are submitted to SBA. Kansas City, through the BizCare office, we're going to be a hub. What we're doing is I've reached out to my sister city, Kansas City, Kansas, which is also known as the Unified Government of Wyandotte County. I'm going to work with them to create access to government contracts. Kansas City, Kansas does not have an affirmative action program for contracts. And so their businesses, although their businesses can come to my side and get certified and get money, because I think last time I checked, there were about 661 certified businesses with the city of Kansas City, and that's all of our certifications. So this fiscal year to date, we spent about $670 million in contracts. Last fiscal year, we spent about $870 million. KCK can't say that. KCK understands that they have an issue with that, and they reached out, and I actually have a counterpart just like me on that side, but she hasn't been able, because she doesn't have an office or staff. Her county or city has not supported her the same way my city is supporting me. And so what I'm hoping as a part of our partnership is I can replicate my office on her side. And she can provide similar, if not the same, resources, and we can share those resources. So now I can begin to educate or direct people who are coming to me from the Kansas City, Kansas side, because they don't know where to go or where to start. And they're thinking I can help them, and I can to some degree, but I want to be able to send them somewhere on their side to say, here's your resource, here's me on your side, and here's where you can go to get that information. So as our part of our partnership with KCK, we are going to work with them through a consultant to one, as like I said before, Kansas City, Missouri, we are trying to figure out how to increase the threshold of our SLBE program so that we can create bigger contract opportunities for our small businesses, which ultimately creates better contract opportunities for our minority and women-owned businesses. That's a low-hanging fruit because it does not require a disparity study. And so that's the first thing we're going to work to implement on the KCK side. So as a peer, we're going to consult them and hire a consultant to do a threshold analysis, as well as provide recommendations for how they can implement a program. And through the SBA grant, which we applied for about $2.5 million, so much money is going to go to my sister city for them to hire someone to get that going and to begin to build out and pull the tools together that they need to replicate my office on their end. My other partner over here, KC SourceLink, they have a CEO to CEO challenge for through supplier diversity and contracts. So they already had a program going. I said to them, hey, when you're working with these CEOs and these corporations, their goal is to get 100 corporations. They have about 15 so far who have committed to say, we are going to spend more and better locally and with minority and women-owned businesses. We're going to build out these programs. We're going to build a better supplier diversity program if we don't have one, or improve the one that we have. And they're going to start setting goals for that. All I want to know is what's the contract opportunities that are available, and how can I get that in front of my businesses? And then what's the process that they have for their supplier diversity programs so that I can prepare my businesses to actually go through that and be prepared to actually do that application and be a part of their program. Because if I can teach them how to do business with me and my sister, I can teach them how to do business with my cousins over here. Now, as we're creating contract opportunities, access to contracts, and improving that process, and also educating folks about how to access that, here are my spokes. So for the sake of the SBA grant, we had to have a minimum of 5 spokes. And because we're doing a regional effort, I picked spokes that can cross the state line. And so VetBiz is regional through the SBA, and they serve about 5 different states, but Kansas and Missouri is one of her biggest ones, and I think she's based out of St. Louis. The toolbox is really, and VetBiz will really focus on veteran businesses, and they really focus on minority veteran businesses is what the emphasis that they've really been trying to enhance. The toolbox, again, now I'm looking at my ecosystem and my partners. You got to really, really evaluate them and what they can do. The Toolbox is a new program that was created through the Kaufman program, through their Forward Cities initiative. And this one is probably going to be most like me that I'm going to work with on the Kansas side. And they really help with the immigrant and refugee population. Kansas City, Kansas has no majority. They are a diverse city, very small city, but very diverse. And so they have a strong Hispanic population. They have a lot of people who are English as a second language. So that was very, very important for us to have a partner to help with that and have the cultural competency to support that. In Kansas City, we have 2 Black chambers. One in particular that I partner with is the Heartland Black Chamber, which will really focus on Black-owned businesses. Again, Prospect Business Association will focus on small and minority businesses in the urban core. And then I had another partner, which is a smaller chamber in KCK. Ironically, the gentleman who is running it now used to be with the Greater Kansas City Chamber. And until he became the executive director for the KCK Chamber, I had no idea it existed. And so he's taking that, he's a Hispanic man, and he's taking that to a whole nother level. And I'll show you what everybody looks like and how diverse we are. But again, I'm creating government contract access, corporate contract access, and through my partners, what I'm going to do with them through this grant, I am going to give them money to hire someone so they can build capacity, because a lot of these organizations are one person led and ran. Only KCK Chamber had a team because of the finances and the sponsorships that they get from their corporates to sustain them. Prospect Business Association is still small. Heartland is still trying to get off the ground. Toolbox, VetBiz has SBA behind them and they have more resources, but she still needed capacity to support the Kansas City market. Each and every last one of these organizations will get a human being that we will support over the next 24 months through this grant, or whatever money we get, we will help them support that and help them to figure out how to sustain that. But I will train them, me, my sister and my cousin, we're gonna train they folks on how to do what we do, our processes, how to go through our systems so that they can provide that exact information and technical assistance one-on-one with the businesses that they see. Again, people are coming to me because they think this is where they start. I see, or I have seen, like I said, we've helped to license over 4,000 new business licenses in Kansas City. I pushed all them out into my ecosystem. And I pushed them to every last one of these folks here. And that's what we want to continue doing, but I needed them to build capacity to do so. So we learned a lot of lessons from PPP Prep. Again, taking that same model, following the guidelines that SBA wanted us to do with the hub and spoke model. And just to note, through the PPP Prep program, we had a goal of saying, okay, we want to get people access to at least $500,000. We were able to give Black and minority owned businesses here in Kansas City access to over $2 million in SBA and local relief grants and loans. And we are still walking them through the forgiveness process. And so we are still working with the small budget that we have, working with accountants, getting them access. And so again, we want to advance that work that we were doing and all the lessons learned from PPP Prep into what we're doing today. And so again, each of these folks will hire someone and build a network of back office support professional providers. And I'm setting aside money from my fund, because again, I'm giving each of them money to get the persons, get sustained, advance the programs or workshops that they may do, because those are still important. We still need education for people. But I didn't want them to have to include any fees for the professional service providers. I'm going to set that aside and then give them to the businesses, to the organizations as needed to support the businesses. And we will negotiate those fees. Again, prep tools and small business counseling, establishing those essential relationships for our businesses to access capital before, it's very, very critical now in the pandemic. And so again, we're going to prep them, application prep in any way that we can so that we can help them access capital. One of the other things that I definitely want to do is build a small business capital fund. Again, like I was explaining earlier with the previous presenters, CDFIs in Kansas City are not seen the same. Some like them, but most of my businesses do not, and their interest rates are too high. I don't have any money on the market, any capital on the market that's less than 6%, or even at 6%. It's very rare that you'll find that. So I want to get that, build that, and get it at 6% or below, but would love to be between 1 to 3, or would love to be at 0, because I want to create a fund that helps them build. So again, this is the model that we started off with. I still have to kind of reconfigure this, again, anyone can do this, but this is the standpoint from the city's perspective. This is my ecosystem from my view. You have to build not only the ecosystem that I connect you to and how I'm connecting people to you, you have to build it from there too. So when they see you, where do they go next? How do you get them moving along so that they're not hung up, and that whoever you're moving them to will actually give them the proper support? Because how I feel about a lot of these organizations, I feel like they're poverty pimping my businesses, because you can make a lot of money off of saying you're going to support entrepreneurs, and you can go and slice that pie even thinner out there for organizations that should be getting funding, like sustaining themselves like the previous presenters, but are having a hard time because those who can paint a shiny picture or got something, but it doesn't really provide any impact and they have no data, will always get the money. And that just blows my mind. So this is what we presented. This is what the team looks like. Again, each of my spokes, these are the leaders of these spoke organizations, will hire a full-time person and have a professional service network. Again, I'm going to have our consultant, our Casey SourceLink. Andrea Dorch is the new director for our Human Relations Department. They oversee our certifications as well as any of our affirmative action programs. Again, when it comes to the technical assistance, I think it's very, very important for us to understand what's absolutely foundationally needed and what we are providing them access to. Business registration, workforce development, capital, and procurement. These are my focus for my ecosystem. I know registration-wise what they need, what my KPIs need to be, what professional service support they need to have. What am I providing them access to? There are several grants. I helped to push out a grant through our Central City sales tax, about $500,000 through a local organization list. And so far, because it's restricted to the boundaries of that, of the sales tax, which is predominantly our east side, it has supported 94% of the businesses that it supported were Black owned. Of those, 70% were women owned. So Black women are really stepping up when it comes to small business, but we need to make sure that they are profitable and that they can pay themselves and hire others. Workforce development is very fundamentally important. I'm on an advisory board for another organization that got an EDA grant, and I had to kind of get on him because he thought that he was going to go in and I'm going to do everything for everybody. Sir, I won't even let a small business think that they can do everything for everybody. Why would I let you think that? You can't, and you are setting yourself up for failure. You're setting my businesses up for failure. If your KPI in your work is to create jobs, what are you doing to support the businesses outside of, oh, we're going to help them get the technology and help them build up their startup, or, give them, help them go through this program. If the program does not support them building a workforce through HR and payroll and setting those things up, you have failed them because you didn't teach them the proper things that they needed as entrepreneurs to make a successful business. And so again, I am trying to build out a workforce development in everything that we're doing, but I want to center around a forgivable loan program similar to PPP, but PPP did not allow for you to hire or build. It only allows you to keep your neck above the water. And so we took those lessons and we are actually pitching. Again, I'm pitching through the city through our stimulus funds. I have a recommendation from our city manager for $5 million that I'm trying to get in our next round. One of my county legislators, the biggest county that takes up Kansas City, which is Jackson County, and their office is actually across the street from City Hall. I have one county legislator that is diligently working, trying to find funding through their stimulus, because they're getting way more than the city's getting to support small businesses, because he recognizes that they didn't give anything, zero, to small businesses in the hundreds of $millions that they have gotten from the federal government for stimulus to support anything in Kansas City. And so I am trying to build out a fund to support that. Access to capital. My local chamber is, our greater Kansas City chamber, ironically, what some people call us the white chamber, is having this conversation with all these banks about access to capital. It's amazing how lost people can be. And really, it's a simple solution. Tell me what your process is. Give me funding to support the organizations that are pretty much doing your job to prepare people through that application prep. And then give them an incentive, a referral fee, when they bring someone to you. Because what a lot of people didn't know through PPP prep is that the banks could have given you a referral fee for everyone that they brought to you. I had 0 banks offer that. So no longer will we work for you for free, and no longer will I allow my ESOs to work for you for free. If they're going to help you get more loans and things of that sort, then you need to be helping them do that. And they are doing your job by helping prepare these businesses to access your capital. But again, there are a lot of different programs that locally and nationally that we were helping to get those folks access to capital to, and PPP Prep was an example of that. Also procurement, again, the work that we're doing with KCK and the corporate work, helping them access the contracts. And what I'm also trying to do, because I know from working on the other side, how hard it is and how much time it takes, working with my father, I realized that his peers didn't have me. And my father was very lucky to have me, and he paid for my education. And yes, I gave it back to him, and I paid it back 20-fold. They didn't have me to do the business development, to go find the opportunities. And sometimes you're searching 20, 30 different sites. I want to centralize by forecasting. As cities, we need to do better at forecasting so that our businesses can better prepare. Because if they're coming to these pre-bid or pre-proposal meetings and they're not on a team, our rule was you were late. You're not going to get on the team if you're just coming at the last minute, or you're going to get the crumbs. They need to be on teams before they walk through the door. And in order for them to do that, and what gives us, as I'm speaking from the standpoint of a small business, what gives us the advantage as small businesses is that if I know what's coming down the pipeline, now I'm not going to this prime with my hand out. Now I'm going to them with a sheet of paper, and we're sitting down at a table, and I'm saying to you, here's some things that I'm interested in. Here's some things that you're interested in. How can we work together? I have contracts I want to work with you on. You have contracts you want to work with me on. Let's build partnerships and not participation. If you are simply participating, you are not building a partnership. And to go beyond the goals of participating and to get more, you have to have a partnership. And so how we help our small business do that is by forecasting, and then also centralizing where we put those contract opportunities. And so with my partner Quali, we are looking at through the site, how I can just, if I know if a corporate is doing something and they have a small bid that they want to get out, I'm gonna centralize that on my site, because all my spokes and my partners are going to go to that site and direct people to the site. And so this is just one central place that we can centralize things, and I can support my partners, and my partners can support the businesses. And again, sometimes we have to take a step back and say, what do the organizations need to better support the entrepreneurs? Because like what was presented before, some of them are doing all the same things. Well, what's the point of that? Who can do something different? What's your niche? What's going to differentiate you from your partner? Because now you guys are competing instead of working together. And so how do I stop those silos in the ecosystem? How do I stop the competitiveness? Because it can get really ugly. And I'm a neutral party as a city. And so I repositioned us in this ecosystem as a neutral party and a support to the organizations that are supporting my entrepreneurs, and a hub for our entrepreneurs to get into the ecosystem to get the support that they need. And so that's pretty much it that I have for today. And so I hope that was beneficial or was worth people's time today, and let me know if you have any questions.
I see a question at Harold. He asked us, does KCB connect into any local tech startup ecosystem partners?
Yeah, so the city, our Economic Development Corporation, our EDC, contracts with the city. And they have a couple of different startup programs. And at one point in time, OHUB out of Atlanta was in Kansas City. And I'm not sure if there still are. I think the pandemic kind of knocked a lot of things out. As far as tech and startup, Kansas City is rich with that. So that big ecosystem that I talked about that KC SourceLink kind of manages, they're all in that. So there are a lot of resources for them. In fact, a lot of money goes to them, and they're like less than 1% of my small businesses. And so I've had to put that reality check back on them. I was like, yeah, I know this is cute and sexy. Because again, I come from a different world. I didn't come into the cute ecosystem, startup tech. This is beautiful. We do fun stuff. That's cute. But everybody's really over here that really, really, really needs the support and can have a much more impact in the community because they're in the community, right? So if my ultimate goal is to close the racial wealth gap in my city, which it is, I can only do that through two things: entrepreneurship, home ownership. And I have to build these ships for my people to withstand the rising tide that is coming against them so they don't get washed away. And so how we do that as a city is that we go in and we leverage our buying power to help close that racial wealth gap. That's what I learned through Living City. So that's kind of how me and Lord met. When I, maybe 3 months into my role here with the city, I applied for a Living Cities grant. I got it. I got a grant to get going, which really helped me to pay for a lot of these different things. Without it, I would not have everything that you see today. I've had to fuss at a lot of people inside the city because I'm new, you know, I don't operate the same way. But I was able to get a lot of this going. And as you can see, Living Cities, that network, and I've always complimented them on that, has connected me to a lot of people, has brought me here to Birmingham, but I've been to a lot of different cities talking to them about different things that they can do from a city standpoint to support the ecosystem. If you're going to build an ecosystem in your city, the city must be involved in that. It is going to be very detrimental to the businesses if they don't know and have those particular support and tools to actually make them legit and have them access the contract opportunities that cities can offer. But as far as startup, innovation, and tech, yes, that is definitely in the ecosystem. We do connect with those, but I play very heavily on what the city does. And that way it keeps me in my lane, because a lot of times people will cross lanes and it just doesn't work. So I stay in my lane, I don't compete, I support, and then I work with my ESOs to really work with them to stay in their own lane so they're not competing with each other, but they're supporting one another.
So another question from Kendra Key. Does the Kansas City Business Licensing Office refer businesses to you if they determine that the prospective applicant is not ready to obtain a license?
Absolutely. Like I said, I share space with them. You can't see it, but everyone over here, and ironically, this is an all-Black office, which I didn't know I was walking into, because that's what I came from, working with my dad. Yeah, people will walk in up front. They'll realize they don't have what they need. They'll walk them right over to us. We'll help them. We'll walk them right back up front. They get their business license. They're out the door. Ironically, a lot of people have tried to get us to move our office, but it won't work because I don't want to be siloed in one community when I'm serving everyone. And I am a one-stop shop, because if I need to send them to the state office, if I need to send them to the county office, they can literally walk to everything. Park above me, because I'm on the bottom floor of a garage. I'm gonna give you a parking pass, go see who you need to see, come back. Again, that's a part of customer service. Get what you need. Again, I can get you going, walk you up front, you walk out with your business license. This little window right here, you don't understand how many celebrations I see people doing and dancing and singing and just are overjoyed and so relieved that they got to do something in a day or an hour that has taken so many people months or years to even just try to figure out to do. And so little things can go a long way for our entrepreneurs to really get to that next level and actually take their business seriously, because a lot of them, it's a hobby. And we keep telling people, is this a hobby or is this a business? Because if you're not paying yourself, it's a hobby. And we want you to be a business, and we want you to pay yourself. We want you to build wealth, because there's a reason why you have this business. And we want you to hire people. And we already know, we've said that before, that minority-owned businesses are more than likely to hire people that look like them. And I've always made that argument to say, why do we spend so much money making these big corps, or people who don't want to hire these people hire them? And we spend all this money on these talks and these conferences. All of that money could have been invested in our small businesses who are going to do it. So I'm not here to force you to do anything. I'm here to help those who really want to do it. And we really need to shift our focus and narrative that way. So the whole equity and diversity and inclusion and all those stuff, don't give me the fluff words. Show me the actions, show me the data, and then let's really make some things happen. And that's what I'm really aggressive about here in Kansas City.
Deal. So are there any other questions?
Hey, Lord, this is Ivan. I'm not sure your protocol. I don't really have a question, just more of a comment about the refreshing nature of Ms. Richardson and her work and her commitment to African-American business and the community of Kansas City, Missouri. I think that, we all are trying to figure out the work in our various organizations, and as a nonprofit organization, it's quite refreshing to hear you say that nonprofits who are doing the work in many cases with these small businesses, they need support too, and helping to understand and bring a variety of data to them to help make the case that their work is beneficial and that there is a goal in mind job creation, wealth creation, stability in neighborhoods, decrease in crime, those kinds of things, right? They are goals. And in order for us to achieve those goals, we have to have support. We have to have R&D, if you will, to really build programs, technical assistance, apparatuses, so that we can do a fantastic job. So it was just great and refreshing to hear you say that, one of the things that you're about is supporting those organizations that support the business. So thank you so much for that. We love to hear that kind of information.
Thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. And if you ever run into my father, tell my father. He would really appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? All right, so thank you, Nia, for for speaking with us. As always, I'm taking notes and partnerships versus participation. I think that's one of the takeaways that I took. Centralizing information, it's important to have information, but to make it easier for people to start businesses and have an end goal for these businesses. And then the last thing I think I wrote down was making things easy and accessible. I think, yes, all those things are important. So I thank you for your time, and if there are no other questions, then we will, get ready to begin to wrap up. So thank you all for participating in this this Penny Foundation's first Equity Summit. One second there. Yeah, I'm hoping that we brought the speakers who provide information that'll be beneficial for us. And the one thing about it, I'm always intentional. So I believe that we have to be intentional about the ecosystem. So as I started the conversation at the beginning of our time together, I was talking about the entrepreneur that basically Elijah and I have spent, and I found out what I think Maisha also has some contact that we spent weeks working with to try to save her business, and still not sure if it's able to be saved. It just makes me think about, and it might sound strange, but it makes me think about The Price is Right, and it makes me think about one of my favorite games when I watched The Price is Right was the Plinko board. Right, you drop this coin, you drop this big token down from front, and it might bounce around, but wherever it bounces around, it always gets to the bottom. And some people win big, and some people don't win as much. But the coin always got to the bottom. And so we have to make sure that as our businesses come into creation, that they actually have a destination and goal that they get to. Some businesses might hit big, some businesses might not be as big. But I think if we're intentional, we can make sure that we have more healthy and sustainable businesses, because we have to increase revenue. We have to increase revenue of our businesses to help continue to move the needle forward in increasing stability in our communities, particularly the Black communities. And so one of my purposes is really bringing these individuals together from living cities to New Orleans to Kansas City. Is I believe that if we were to take the model that New Orleans has used in order to activate and create a community-based approach to ecosystem building, and pair that with the technology that we see in Kansas City in the dashboard, that we can create something special here in Birmingham to specifically support businesses, Black businesses, minority businesses, and business in general. And so that's really the end goal for me. As I learned about these different models and seeing where the Penny Foundation positions itself and in order to do work, is not to compete. We're not really interested in doing the technical assistance. What I care about is the ecosystem, and do we have a healthy ecosystem that's being managed to support all businesses. And so with that, as far as next takeaways, I know there are a number of people from the city on board on this particular Zoom meeting. And so we'll follow up the city to see about their interest and begin planning, flesh out what it really means, what this looks like, and begin to have more conversations with partners as we seek to build a roadmap to implement these two programs here in Birmingham. It's audacious, it's big, it's gonna take money, we're gonna need support, but I believe it's doable, and I believe it has to be done if we're going to talk about making Birmingham really the magic city and making it boom again. So with that, are there any other questions or thoughts, concerns? It's okay to tell me I'm crazy. I might not listen because I'm crazy, but you know, you can at least put it out there. All right.
Lord,
So-
I'll just say, I think you did a great job pulling this together, and you had excellent speakers who spoke from their heart, who spoke from data, who spoke from information. And so I think that it's definitely information that we can utilize to structure whatever we need to make Birmingham a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just not for data, right? These are people so again, we build partnerships, not participation. And so and each one of these places, right, when the pandemic lifts, you know, you'll be seeing me in Kansas City, seeing your shop and seeing how it operates, and I'll be in New Orleans, and so we'll be bringing teams down there, and so that's the goal. We're all connected now. I'm sure that just like I recruited her on one conversation, she's gonna pay me back in some form or fashion to get me to do something else, and that's just how the ecosystem works. But there are architects out there who are building wonderful ecosystems, and just like Kansas City and New Orleans, although we were connected loosely through living cities, they didn't know each other. So now they're connected through this, and we work together in some form of capacity. And we just use that to grow, to grow community, to grow business. But the resources are here. The resources and support are there. We have the coaching from both places to actually make this happen. It's about will and guts. People need it, because I can tell you people hurting. Businesses are hurting, communities are hurting. And so that's why I'm passionate about making this happen. Thank you.
Hey, Laura, I just want to say, one, thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. I wish we had more time where I could have got to talk with more of you one-on-one, because I really love to know the people that I'm talking to in the audience. But I'm very excited to have engaged with the Birmingham community. I appreciate you guys welcoming me in. I put my information in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me by phone or email. I have the easiest extension in the city, 1234. But my email and my phone information is in the chat if you would like to reach out or ask me more questions. I'm, like I told Lord, I'm willing to support in any way that I can, offer any resources that I can. Like I said, the technology that I have is being customized and built for me. They're doing stuff in other cities. They're actually in Mobile, working on with the city of Mobile on their DPE program. But again, they're one option out of maybe a variety of folks that have technology out there. And like I said before, as you're building an ecosystem, having that technology and that data to support that is going to be very, very essential. And it's a game changer. And that's something I realized, especially being so new in this industry from this angle, going in. And that's what's helping me to move really, really quickly through these barriers, and really set us up as a city within the ecosystem. So, we talked a lot about that, Lord, about, the technology versus the ecosystem or the village, because I come from a village, I didn't know what an ecosystem was before coming in here. So I was raised in a village. I have a village. I had the accountants, attorneys, or folks around me that were friends with my father, or that were just a part of my village that I could tug on. And I spent my life trying to figure out how to replicate that for my peers and everyone else. And so I was very fortunate to be raised in a conscious household, to be raised by a two-parent household, to be raised in such a way that has allowed me to do the work that I'm doing through the lens of my parents, particularly my father and the work that he's done. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm glad that you recorded it so I could share it with them, but just wanted to thank you and all the others who I've spoken with beforehand to allow me to be here. Because at first I was like, oh man, you trying to sign me up for some more work? I got things to do. But I'm happy that I was able to engage and conversate with you, not so much to really talk about what we do, but to begin to build out my own personal network of peers in other cities and other folks who are looking to build out Black ecosystems or any type of ecosystem or village for entrepreneurs in your city. So please call on me as a resource for anything else.
Good deal. And so we want to again thank our sponsors. I want to thank JW, Prosper Birmingham. I believe we might have had to get off a little earlier. I see Victor Brown with the Birmingham Business Alliance. And so we want to thank our sponsors. Without this, it wouldn't be possible. Thank you all. I think the last thing I am going to do in particular is to share my screen. So again, we have had a busy month over here at the Penny Foundation, and we will end the month. And my screen has frozen. So we're in the month with Intersection. It is our capstone event where we will announce the winners of our second grant cycle. And then we'll also share just updates on other things we've done throughout the month, whether it's from our conversation with other Black community foundations, whether it's our Bitcoin conference. We'll share information about this conference and just the programs and what have you. So thank you again for joining us. Yep, got you out here even about 10 minutes early, so I like to be on time. And so we look forward to connecting. Stay connected. If we don't have your email, please drop in the chat or send me an email. I believe I have most everybody's email, but look forward to hearing from us soon as we continue to go down this path and recruit partners and move forward and supporting Black businesses. Thank you all. Take care.